Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description.
Naruto, The Game of Life by SeerKing. Uzumaki Naruto wakes up one day to find out that his life has been turned into a RPG game, thanks to his gamer ability. What should he do about this? Smarter Naruto. Naruto X Harem.
Chapter 14:14 vs 1. The next day, Taijutsu Sparring Circle, Konohagakure Ninja Academy. Naruto dodged out of the way of the incoming fist, diving in close to his opponent and driving an elbow right into Shino's solar plexus, making him fall back with a grunt and wheeze. "Damn Shino. You're tough," the blonde boy said, appraising Ly. "Thank you, Uzumaki-san," the Aburame heir said in a monotone. "You are stronger than you appear to be. I shall have to try harder." "Bring it," Naruto grinned. Shino was a nice guy, totally non-judgmental and calm. He could use some help in modulating his voice though. This was the first time Naruto had faced against Shino and his family's Kamakiri style, praying mantis, taijutsu. As Aburame were primarily mid-range combatants, it was a defensive style that relied on precision strikes and exploiting the weakness in the enemy's style to land blows at critical junctures in combat. It was different from both the Hokage style and whatever style Sasuke Teme used, as both of those were either neutral or offensive styles. The spar continued for a few minutes before Naruto kicked Shino's legs out from under him and placing a heel on his throat, which would allow him to crush it and leave the boy to suffocate if this were a true fight. "Cease," Iruka-sensei declared. "The winner is Uzumaki Naruto, congratulations." "Yada dat bayo," Naruto grinned before he removed his foot from Shino's neck and extended a hand to help him up. The Aburame heir grasped it and hauled himself up before both he and Naruto made the sign of reconciliation. "Your skills have made a determinable improvement, Uzumaki-san," Shino stated. "I shall have to up my training to compensate." Looking forward to seeing the results, the blonde orphan smirked. As they both exited the sparring circle, Naruto surreptitiously closed the window that had popped up. "Congratulations. The quest, Catch the Fly, has been completed. You successfully defeated Aburame Shino in a sparring match. Quest reward: plus 500 XP, plus 200 reputation with Aburame Shino, plus 1000 Ryo. Bonus reward: first sparring victory, advanced Hokage-style taijutsu, skill book." The last part made Naruto's mood sour slightly. The only reason that this was his first victory in a spar was that he had always been pitted against Sasuke Teme before now. As much as it burned Naruto to admit it, the Uchiha was way more skilled at taijutsu than he was. Worse, Sasuke was using what had to be a clan taijutsu style rather than the Hokage style, so his strength, toughness and dexterity bonuses were very likely to be higher than his own. "Still, now that I have this new skill book, I can upgrade my taijutsu once I max out the intermediate Hokage style that I'm using right now," he thought. Sasuke smirked as he watched Naruto out of the corner of his eye. It was right that the Dobi would become stronger after getting his butt kicked by him all the time. If his rival didn't keep getting stronger in pace with him, there was no point in having him as such. A slightly puzzled Naruto closed a window informing him he had gained 50 relationship with Uchiha Sasuke. Meanwhile, Mizuki was cursing at him vilely behind his teacher mask, and wondering how to sabotage him now, when he had seemed to have catch on to all of the tricks the Chunin had pulled up until this point. He was performing his taijutsu kata perfectly. His throwing form was spot on and Mizuki daren't risk another mistaken test mix-up after the last time. Iruka's becoming suspicious, TCH. The man thought, "It can't be helped, I'll just have to back off for a couple of months. It isn't as if the demon will become too strong by the end of that time." As he thought that, the strap on his sandals snapped, a complete coincidence. After the academy Ichiraku's ramen stand, and then, blam, "I had him beat, GG," Naruto said to the Hokage, who listened indulgently as they waited for their ramen. "A well-earned victory, Naruto-kun." He congratulated his surrogate grandson. "The Aburame taijutsu style is not easily overcome, although I can assure you that Shino-kun will be training hard to become stronger now that you have defeated him once." Really, Shino doesn't seem like the competitive type, Naruto said in puzzlement. True. Most Aburame are not competitive in general. The old man agreed, but while they attempt to be extremely logical as much as possible, they are only human, so things such as competitiveness do tend to crop up every now and again, especially when they're younger. Huh. Makes sense. The boy nodded. It must be hard to be so stoic and logical all the time. I couldn't manage it at all. There are always exceptions to every rule and clan trait. Sarutobi chuckled, such as a Yamanaka who cannot use their mind-walking jutsu or a Sarutobi who cannot use Kaden or Doden ninjutsu. Granted, they might be rare, but they do happen. I guess that the clans don't like that, Naruto asked. Sadly no, they usually send the child to the orphanage or set them up with a home and caretaker until they either graduate from the academy or turn 18. The Hokage sighed. I would have made that latter practice a requirement if it were entirely my choice, but the shinobi clans have spent quite some time working on keeping the Hokage out of clan business, so shoot down any law that would force them to do something they do not wish to do. Why not start it as a civilian clan law? Naruto suggested. If it works there, you could suggest it as expanding into the shinobi section of the law after a few years. This took the Hokage back. He had never tried that tack, but now that Naruto suggested it, it actually did make more sense. Unlike the shinobi clans, the civilian clans of Konoha mainly focused on stopping any law that might cut into their profits, for the merchants, or support the demon, for the morons. A law such as what Sarutobi had spoken of would be an entirely civilian matter if he proposed it Naruto's way, meaning that the opinions of the shinobi clans would be discounted and they wouldn't be able to vote about it. Plus, with a few years of success in the civilian system, it would be harder to argue against it rather than a completely untried and untested law. I may very well do that, Naruto-kun, he said thoughtfully, mentally tallying the resources needed to execute such a law and finding them to be well in place should the law pass. The civilians were very stingy when it came to spending their funding, leaving it to mount up for quite some time, just in case, when Sarutobi knew, for a fact, that it went towards at least one extravagant party per year. This would teach them to be skinflints. Naruto noticed that he had gained a further plus 100 to his relationship with the Hokage and was once again puzzled. He was drawn from his puzzlement by the delicious smell of ramen wafting closer to him. Here's your ramen, Naruto-kun, Hokage-sama. Tucci boomed with a smile as he laid down the bowls in front of his customers. Even the Hokage had to admit that the man was a genius when it came to cooking ramen, and his mouth started watering as he gazed at his meal. Itadakimasu, Naruto said happily, tucking into the Ichiraku ramen specialty, the Uzumaki Deluxe. Featuring almost every ingredient you could combine in ramen, with a high-quality broth that blended the flavors perfectly. All in all, it was the most delicious ramen Naruto had ever eaten, and he only ate it on special occasions, such as his birthday, if he could make it to Ichiraku's without incident, and any especially good days he had had, which were few and far between. Winning his first sparring match, ever, counted in his book. How has Asuma been getting along? The Hokage asked in between bites. MMF. He likes the place. Naruto replied, slurping up the noodles faster than most would think was physically possible. No other place has all those training rooms. There's even a shuriken and mid-range jutsu range in the basement. I had no idea about that until he founded Datbeo. Sounds like him. Sarutobi said in Amos, like exploring his home as a child. It fails to surprise me that that continued into adulthood. The Uzumaki boy had visions of a chibi Asuma running around a huge clan compound and had to chuckle at the thought. Then something occurred to him. Neijiji. I haven't seen a Sarutobi clan compound around, he said with a thoughtful expression on his face. Is there one? Have I just been looking in the wrong place? Is it big? There was a large one, back before the Second Great Ninja War. The Hokage informed his surrogate grandson. It was damaged badly in a sneak attack by infiltrators from Iwagakure and was abandoned. It has since been demolished and new housing built over it. The Sarutobi live in a small compound in the clan residential district now. Well, small for the clan residential district anyway. As for myself, I live in the Hokage Tower most of the time, but go back to spend the night with Asahi and his family every now and again. Aren't you lonely? The boy asked in concern. Sarutobi just chuckled and ruffled Naruto's hair, making him pout. "No, I'm not," the Hokage said kindly. "I consider each and every member of the village to be my own family, so I'm never alone." Naruto stared at the Hokage in awe. That must be tough when they go nuts and attack people like that guy with the ninjutsu a few months back. "I know who you mean." Sarutobi nodded wearily. He lost his brother during the day of the Kyuubi and never recovered from it, drowning his sins away in cheap rock gut day in and day out. That incident was when he finally snapped, I'm afraid. He really took good care of that sword, now I come to think about it. The boy mused, it looked better than new. It was a relic of his brother's ninja career. He cared for it obsessively, only cleaning himself up when he had to polish and maintain it. The Hokage said despondently, despair is like an illness, Naruto-kun. It can bring even the mightiest ninja low, break the proudest of people into something unrecognizable. The man who attacked you had hit rock bottom and didn't have the strength to try and stand back up again. That was because he closed himself off and didn't allow others to help him. Learn from him in this, Naruto-kun. No man is an island. Accept help if you cannot do something yourself and offer help if you see someone cannot do something themselves. Naruto nodded solemnly, ignoring the window informing him that his wish had just gone up by 1 for listening to the Hokage's lecture. Will do, Gigi. He said. Later training ground 13 entrance, okay. Today's goal is to finally level up to level 15. Naruto pumped himself up as he jogged towards the gate leading into the training ground. He was in good form today after his spar with Shino and he was looking forward to finally getting to that next level. Given how Sasuke was at level 15 and had been for a while, it was safe to assume that there was a level limit that stopped academy students from becoming too powerful. His stat increases were also slowly coming less and less frequently. He was willing to be that they would stop once they reached a certain point as well. With still 3 or 4 months left until graduation, it was going to become tedious if he couldn't level up. Well, I guess I can focus on mastering my jutsu if that happens. He reasoned to himself. He didn't like the idea of only being able to train his jutsu, but he could see how useful it would be to have them all maxed out, or at least on the way there. Entering the first area, the blonde orphan frowned. Although he didn't like the cliché, it really was too quiet in the forest. No birds chirping, no sound of the mutated squirrels fighting each other. Nothing. Had someone come in to do some training of their own and killed them? Drawing a kunai, he continued his advance into the training ground, senses screaming at him that something stank about this situation. As far as he knew, he was the only person who used TG-13 for anything, and he was certain his Gigi would have let him know that he was sending someone in to clear the place. Very suspicious. Not a single attack. Yep, someone's been through here and cut down all the chakra mutations. Naruto thought nervously. His instincts were currently screaming at him that this situation was abnormal and that he should get out of there as fast as he could. And that he should eat some ramen, but that was normal for him. Leaving the first area and moving to the second, Naruto was yet again struck by how uncannily silent the training ground was, without the usual sounds of animals and chakra mutants filling it. Even the wind was silent, removing the usual background sound of rustling leaves that was almost omnipresent in Konoha. It was really unsettling. Yo, brat. The muffled voice of a man startled Naruto as he seemed to melt out of the tree in front of him. He wore a cloth mask over his face and had a battered Konoha Hite 8 on his forehead. Much to Naruto's mild horror, he also wore a black spandex jumpsuit that showed that he had definitely eaten all the pies. Yamaguchi Tetsuro LV-25, rotund retired chunin, the man's title was brutally accurate. Who are you? Naruto asked, playing dumb. My name is of no importance. Tetsuro spat disdainfully. I am here to put an end to you, demon brat. Aw man, don't tell me you're the one who let those nuke Enin into Konoha the other day? Naruto complained as he shifted to a defensive stance. I had nothing to do with it, brat. The man sniffed snootily. I only wish that they had managed to kill you so I didn't have to bother. Bloodlust detected. Immediately behind you. Without hesitating, Naruto hit the dirt and rolled over, dodging the swipe of the ninjutsu that would have beheaded him. A man dressed similarly to Tetsuro gaped at him for a moment before Naruto lashed out with his right leg, slamming his foot right into his assailant's groin. Letting out a mix between a pained moan and a yell of outrage, the man crumpled to the ground and assumed the fetal position, cupping his battered family jewels as he whimpered in pain. Tadakatsu Tomo LV-20, retired genin, you little bastard, Tetsuro roared and pulled a kunai from somewhere, hurling it at Naruto with practiced ease. Dodging to one side, Naruto noticed something odd in one corner of his vision, a timer. It was at 4:54 and was rapidly counting down to 0. No quest had popped up to explain what the hell was going on, and he didn't have the legroom to look up the guide, so he just had to hope it was something that might help him here. Dear sweet Cammy, he's brat, a female voice complained, can't you two slobbering morons do anything right? Shut up woman and help us, Tetsuro barked. Never send a man to do a woman's job. The female voice grumbled and a woman dressed in black spandex apparently walked out of a tree, ninjutsu in hand. Kagami Kodama LV-26, retired Chunin Kunoichi. Another Kagami, man, these guys have it out for me. Naruto thought privately. He noticed that the timer sped up, a minute and a half dropping from the countdown. He was also willing to be that the same thing had happened when the second man had launched his attack against him. 302, I don't suppose you people would be willing to tell me why you're doing this? Naruto asked casually as he shifted his grip on his kunai and tried to keep an eye on all three of the enemy at once. You already know what you did, demon, Kodama spat darkly, now die. She lunged forwards and tried to impale Naruto on the blade of her sword, but Naruto was able to dodge away from the woman's attack, muttering, observe, as he did so. He used his little skill on all three of his opponents and noticed one thing that was universal among them. Their stats were all crap. They were suffering from a special status called, out of practice. Meaning that it had been years since they had even picked up a weapon in anger. They had trained, just not enough to prevent the gradual degradation of their skills. The guy who had Beelerly bad. Naruto dominated him in every category aside from luck. Ya know, you guys kinda suck at this whole assassination thing, he remarked as he dodged another swipe of a ninjutsu with relative ease. But before we really get into this, I have got to ask, why the hell are you all wearing spandex? There was a moment of infuriated silence as the two upright attackers seemed to glare at him for daring to mention the spandex. Well, we can't exactly wear proper shinobi outfits, can we? The prone man groaned. Oh, my fucking balls. Oh, stop massaging your balls and stand up already, Kodama said impatiently. Men, I swear. Hey, you try having your vitals kicked by a brat, Tetsuro protested. Let me tell you, it's no fun. Oh, just shut up and kill the brat already, Kodama snarled. Tomo finally staggered to his feet, although he was walking very gingerly and wincing every now and then. It made Naruto feel slightly guilty to have broken the rule of the unspoken bro code. Never use the nutcracker. 0030020010. A loud buzzer echoed in Naruto's ears as the clock hit 0 and abruptly, the field flickered and shimmered before a pair of chakra mutations appeared in the forest, ones he recognized. Berserk Fox Squirrel. And, Mogora Wagora, he breathed in dread. The two boss monsters that had taken him everything to defeat separately now stood together, looking even meaner than the last time he had faced them, and for good reason. LV-20 Berserk Fox Squirrel, LV-21 Mogora Wagora, the massive mole. Oh come on, I killed them already, he yelled loudly in exasperation, as well as a little fear. The levels of the two monsters had been really boosted for some reason. Warning. Due to oversaturation of chakra by more than one Chunin level shinobi or more than 3 Genin level shinobi for an extended period of time, the strongest variants of the strongest monsters in areas 1 and 2 have been summoned. While within your capability to slay, they also receive bonuses to their stats for every person above Chunin level in the training ground. It is advisable to flee at this point in time. What the hell are those monsters? Why are all of you here? Weren't you supposed to be keeping an eye on the perimeter? How should I know, dumbass? Standing squabbling in the middle of the forest were 14 adults, all wearing black spandex. All of them were retired Chunin or Genin, which really explained why the timer had started so low. with 14 ninja and kunoichi pumping out chakra with presence concealment jutsu for who knows how long, it wasn't any wonder that they'd somehow supercharged the chakra mutations. "I'm outta here," he said and sped away. "Get him!" cried most of the idiots who had caused the situation in the first place. They charged after the blonde orphan, ignoring the mutations. After all, they had killed the others easily. Why would these be any different? Big mistake. With a shrill screech of rage, the berserk fox squirrel launched itself at the closest person to it, digging in its claws and attempting to rip at his throat. He screamed and thrashed his arms, sending the creature flying off of him with a solid punch to its jaw. "Fuck, what the hell?" he screamed. While the attention of the majority of the adult shinobi fell on the overt threat, Mogora Wagora tunneled underground, emerging to drag another one of the spandex-clad ninja underground with a scream. "Son of a bitch! Why is this happening? It's your fault, you morons!" Naruto roared before he ran headfirst into an invisible wall. Swearing like a sailor and rubbing his abused nose, he glared and observed it. Average barrier ninjutsu. A barrier made of pure chakra energy. It is used to either keep people out or keep someone inside the location encased by the barrier. This particular one is of average strength and can be destroyed by overloading it with chakra-based attacks. In other words, launch a lot of ninjutsu at it and watch it shatter like a glass wall. Doer. 1500 regeneration. 50 doer per minute. Special skills. Resist ninjutsu. 30%. Resist physical. 30%. Hell in a handbasket. Doden. Iwa Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto growled, slamming a hand on the ground, causing 15 clones to shoot up from it in an explosion of earth and grass. "Bombard the damn barrier so we can get out of here," he ordered them. "I'll hold off the moron brigade and the damn mutations." As the Iwa Bunshin started to volley Gansetsukan and Dongan at the barrier, Naruto turned around to see that the group of ninja retirees had somehow managed to save their kidnapped friend, but were only barely able to fend off the rampaging squirrel and marauding mole. Might as well help them, Naruto thought with a sigh. Futon. Senfukyu. Raising his hand to his mouth, he fired 3 swirling balls of wind at Mogora Wagora, which slammed into its nose. The giant mole unleashed a pained screeching wail of pain and sent 3 of the spandex-clad ninja retirees flying with one swipe of its paws. "Ga! Gubu! Ie! Damn you, demon brat!" One kunoichi yelled at him. "Right, you and you. Handle the damn squirrel. You and you hold off the supersized mole. The rest of us will do what we came to do and kill the demon brat." The spandex brigade obeyed her, 2 men drawing their ninjutsu to deal with the berserk fox squirrel, while 2 other men and a kunoichi moved to contain Mogora Wagora. The rest turned to face Naruto, who snarled at them. "Once again, just to be absolutely clear here, this is your fault," he shouted angrily, gesturing at the 2 powerful mutations. "And how do you figure that out, demon brat?" Tomo asked condescendingly. "Because this place was closed for chakra saturation, numbskull," the blonde orphan stated. "It could barely handle me coming in and firing off ninjutsu like crazy, so having you lot coming in and using concealment jutsu for who knows how long refilled the saturation to what it was before I got started again and summoned those things. More powerful versions of the alpha monsters that I killed. Thanks for that, dumbass. Now I'm gonna have to start from scratch." "Kill the brat," one of the spandex squad shouted. "Kaden. Gokakyu." 3 of the men fired the well-known fire jutsu at Naruto, all of them using the fireball form. It was a weakness of most people to only use that form, or so Asuma-sensei had told him. They used the fireball form rather than the flamethrower form because of aesthetics. He thought the word Asuma had used was. He didn't know what it meant, but it seemed to make the bearded Jonin irritated. Now that the Uchiha were reduced to a single member, Sasuke Teme, the only clan that specialized in Kaden Jutsu were the Sarutobi, so it was logical to assume that it offended Asuma's pride to see a versatile Kaden Jutsu misused so. Rolling out of the way of the fireballs, Naruto countered with a swarm of Gansetsukan that forced the attackers to scatter slightly. One stone stave even pierced through one man's leg. Target leg pierced through, status, bleeding, inflicted. Target mobility reduced by 20%. Son of a bitch. Get that little bastard, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto said, forming the cross-hand sign of the jutsu. 5 clones appeared and charged the enemy while the original ran through hand signs for his strongest futon jutsu. Futon. Daitapa. The air around Naruto was compressed into a blast of wind that flew away from him and sent some of the more scattered members flying into trees. Meanwhile, the clones were engaging the other retirees with more Gansetsukan, using the staves to augment their lack of reach. Shadow clones? Rock clones? Rock staves? Who the hell is teaching this demon brat all these jutsu? Tomo yelled. Just then, the Iwa Bunshin shattered the barrier with a synchronized volley of well-placed Doden. Dangan. This dismayed the Spandex Brigade, especially when a squad of Anbu blurred into existence around them and soundlessly binding them with some kind of paralyzing jutsu before following up. Naruto recognized. Sweden Ninpo. Mizuame Bakuho. It bound the spandex-clad ninja by their hands and feet. Uzumaki-san. The cat-masked Anbu said with a nod as she casually beheaded the berserk fox squirrel with her ninjutsu. I trust you are unharmed? Why yeah, I'm fine, Neko-san. Naruto stammered, not believing that the powerful squirrel had been killed in less than 2 seconds. Another member of her team, Saru, electrocuted Mogora Wagora with a powerful Raiden jutsu, killing it instantly. Note to self. Do not piss off the Anbu. Naruto thought before correcting himself. Second note to self. Do not piss the Anbu enough for them to get really serious about catching you. Good. My comrades will deal with these criminals. The purple-haired woman stated disdainfully, you should return to your home. Hokage-sama will no doubt want to debrief you in person. Hi, Neko-san. Naruto nodded obediently. Anbu technically weren't a part of the usual shinobi chain of command, but they were still ninja, and any civilian, as he was at the moment, had to obey an order given by a ninja if it had to do with village security, and Naruto knew that this definitely counted. Leaving the training ground, he sighed in aggravation. This was the second time in very recent times that his training had been interrupted by a bunch of morons, and this time he didn't even have any quest rewards or express to go along with it, which was actually odd. Hey Naruto. What's up? A familiar voice called out to him. The blonde boy looked around to see Tenten waving at him as she jogged over to walk next to him. Ah, nothing much. He sighed, just some idiots who put the chakra saturation of TG13 back up to maximum, so everything'll be stronger again. That sucks. The weapons expert winced. Well, at least you'll be able to challenge yourself again. True. Naruto allowed. You out on an errand? Yup. Doing a delivery. Tenten nodded. To you actually. The last part of the storm suit you bought, the shoulder armor, Dad decided to replace it with something a little better. I'll show you when we get to your place. When they entered Naruto's apartment, Tenten unrolled a scroll and unsealed a shoulder plate similar to the one he had bought, but it had several lines of fuinjutsu written into the underside that had various effects, such as increasing the density of the armor when it was struck by physical attacks, as well as reducing the weight of the clothes to almost nothing. Wow, any reason why your dad suddenly wanted to give me this? Naruto asked, touched by the gesture. He said something about you likely being a magnet for trouble, so you need better armor than average or something like that. The brunette grinned, seeing the boy pout. It isn't like I asked for those damn nuke-enen to attack us. Naruto groused with his pout on full blast. I know Naruto. Tenten laughed. By the way, where's Asuma-sensei? He usually drops in on us by this point. He left on a mission this morning. Naruto informed her. He said he should be gone for about a week. Shame. I was looking forward to more lessons. The kunoichi commented with a sigh. I can't believe it took Gai-sensei this long to get me a ninjutsu tutor, a whole year. Didn't him teaching that Rock Lee guy take up a lot of his time? Naruto pointed out. From what Iruka-sensei and you have said, the only thing he has going for him is taijutsu, so getting it up to a point that he doesn't need ninjutsu or genjutsu must have really eaten into his time. The weapons mistress sighed. I know, and I don't really begrudge Lee that. I mean, he tries so damn hard that you can't complain about it even if he does take up most of Gai-sensei's time. It's just, if he knew he would be spending most of his time with Lee, you'd have thought he'd have arranged tutors for me and Neji. Maybe he didn't know initially, but got caught up in teaching Lee. Naruto suggested, "I've heard that he's overenthusiastic about things." Tenten snorted at that gross understatement of one made a guy. And Lee as well, now she came to think about it. "True enough," she said with a chuckle, "I'd better head home. Oto-san is getting me to help him forging your sword. It'll be a great weapon, I promise." "I'm looking forward to seeing it, Ten-chan," he said before clapping a hand over his mouth when he realized he had called her by a nickname without her permission. While not as rude as referring to her without honorifics without permission, it was still pretty rude, and he knew very well how strong one Higurashi Tenten was, perhaps better than she did herself. Much to his surprise, she blushed a bit and cleared her throat. "Ahem. Well, you'd better. See ya next time you have to come to the shop." Naruto stared after Tenten in puzzlement as she walked quickly left his apartment, still blushing slightly. What the heck had that been about? Shrugging at what he labeled as another addition to the weird girl habits folder that he had mentally allocated all such incidences since he started paying attention to females. Needless to say, as Naruto wasn't the sharpest tool in the drawer when it came to noticing subtle hints and reading body language and facial expressions, this folder was fairly large. A knock on the door came about 5 minutes later and Naruto welcomed the Hokage into his home. The old man looked tired and drawn, with echoes of residual fury and worry in his eyes. "Ah, Naruto-kun," Sarutobi said with a sigh, "so, once again, we have people ambushing you inside of TG-13. This is becoming something of a habit, my boy." "Not due to any fault of my own." The academy student crossed his arms stubbornly. "Quite so, but it has happened twice. And that is twice too often." The elderly Hokage said firmly, "I will have a barrier placed around the training ground so you will be able to detect the presence of anyone with active chakra within it. It will be keyed to you, so no one else will be able to use it. Should this occur again, however, I will be forced to prohibit you from entering TG-13. Am I understood, Naruto-kun?" "Hi, Gigi." Naruto replied, not happy about it, but understanding his grandfather figure's position. "Very good. Now, the Hokage sat on an armchair. Please tell me your side of the story. The 14 morons have cut a story from white cloth, I am sure, so hearing your side will be enlightening." Naruto launched into a tale of his time in the training ground today, what little of it there was, and what the spandex-clad weirdos had done, as well as a modest account of his own actions to take care of them. "What I don't get was why they were wearing spandex of all things," Naruto added once he finished. "They couldn't sneak their active-duty ninja outfits past their spouses or had sent them to the laundry." Sarutobi smiled with macabre amusement. One of them owned a clothing store and was able to get some spandex suits that were surplus out of the storeroom. All of them were, as you suspected, retirees from the ninja forces. Forcibly retired due to PTSD or some other condition, mostly. What Sarutobi neglected to tell Naruto was that all 14 of the idiots had also been retired forcibly due to their inability to accept that Naruto was merely the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, not the great demon fox itself. They had all been the most outspoken about it in the force and had been nails that stuck out. Sarutobi, by kindly retiring them due to stress, had made a silent point to the other, more quiet members of the forces 12 years ago. Shut up about Naruto being the demon fox because it wasn't true. If you can't, get out or be hammered out. As he sat and spoke with his surrogate grandson, Yamanaka Inoichi was interviewing the families of the conspirators to see if they had had any inkling of their wayward family members' intentions. Morino Ibiki was handling the interrogation of the Spandex Brigade, to use Naruto's amusing nomenclature. Sarutobi expected confessions on his desk by the time he got back to the tower. Even if they weren't horribly out of practice, the fact that Naruto-kun was able to hold off 14 shinobi at once while breaking a barrier is an incredible feat. The old man thought proudly, "I think that a new jutsu scroll would be appropriate here, as I thought it would. I had a stroll through my jutsu library before coming here, Naruto-kun," he said with a smile and pulled out a scroll. "You have markedly improved your skills in the past few months, and this incident proves it beyond any shade of doubt. Take this as a reward for making this old man proud of you." "Thank you, Gigi." Naruto hugged his grandfather figure excitedly. "What jutsu is it?" "It's a futon jutsu, futon. Fujinheki, wind style. Windblade wall, The Hokage replied. It compresses the air in front of you into a solid wall of air that blocks incoming attacks. Once you master the basics, you can have it sprout blades to stab anyone who crashes into it. You can even set it up to appear in any location within your line of sight. Cool, I had noticed that you had very little in the way of defensive jutsu, so this is a step to rectify that. Sarutobi said with a nod. Be warned however. This is a B-rank technique and requires more finesse than your Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. It might take you a while to use even the most basic form, but I am confident you will be able to manage it. Once the Hokage left, with an admonition to his grandson to get some sleep, Naruto tried to learn the new jutsu and failed. Many apologies, the gamer is down for maintenance and updating. You are still able to use skills and view your stats, but all other aspects are frozen. Emergency warnings are active, so any dangers not covered by your skills will be made known to you. The estimated time until updates and maintenance are completed is 12 hours 30 minutes. What the hell? Naruto roared. Meanwhile, interrogation cell, Anbu-T and IHQ. Yamaguchi Tetsuro whimpered as Morino Ibiki loomed over him. The scarred Tokuho's face smirked down at him as he cracked his knuckles. I must thank you for this, Yamaguchi. Ibiki said conversationally. Idiots like you allow me to keep my skills in good working order for when actual threats need to be discovered. Something I'm betting that you wish you had done. Tetsuro, regrettably, agreed with him there. Now, as I am feeling generous, I will allow you a single chance to tell me everything about your laughable plan to assassinate our Jinchuriki. The scarred man stated, in other words, we can do this the easy way or the real easy way. Up to you which way we go. The spandex-clad man debated his option here, weighing pride against being tortured by the most skilled interrogator in the T and I section of Anbu, and came to a conclusion. What do you want to know? Chapter 15. System update. The next day, Hokage's office, Hokage Tower. This is the result of the interrogations conducted by myself, Yamanaka Inoichi, and Mitarashi Anko, Hokage-sama. Ibiki stated as he placed a pair of scrolls on the desk. One of them spilled his guts before I could even do more than mildly threaten him. With the information I got from him, I was able to authorize the use of the Yamanaka clan's mind-reading techniques. The scarred man regretted the fact that it was illegal to use the Yamanaka clan's Hijutsu on Konoha citizens with only the suspicion of wrongdoing or even minor misdemeanors. And unfortunately, civilians and retired shinobi trespassing into a Category 1 restricted areas, open to all active shinobi but not civilians or retired shinobi, without permission, was only a misdemeanor. Using a jutsu in a public place was another offense, but since the Kekai ninjutsu they'd used only kept people in or out without doing any damage, it was catalogued as a misdemeanor on the same lines as disturbing the public peace. Taken on their own, both actions were fairly minor crimes that would have resulted in the group only facing fines and possibly a few days in holding cells. If someone hadn't spilled the beans anyway, but since one of them had sung like the proverbial canary, Ibiki Kid, and had used that confession to use the skill of Inoichi to parse through the minds of the other 13 members of the Spandex Brigade, he had to credit the boy for his to-the-point nomenclature, and find out exactly what they were up to. Sarutobi folded his hands on his desk, and the summary? All 14 are guilty of premeditated attempted murder against one Uzumaki Naruto. The scarred Tokuho stated simply, his tone containing no emotion, merely reciting the facts as they had been discovered, as well as numerous cases of minor harassment, intimidation and price gouging of the same individual. It's only a shame that they aren't active duty ninja, so he can't simply court-martial them. There was a touch of disdain added to that final sentence. The Hokage privately agreed with Ibiki's opinion, but unlike Danzo, he respected the rule of law and didn't twist it to suit his vengeful vendetta, particularly when Naruto hadn't received anything worse than a few scratches from the encounter. If they had managed to seriously harm Naruto, on the other hand, he would have given Mitarashi Anko free rein to use them as instructional test dummies for the newest recruits in T and I. She had been asking for some prisoners to practice on recently and, shaking himself out of the wistful daydream, Sarutobi nodded at Ibiki. Good work. Now, how to punish them? There's enough evidence to send them to the Broken Branch. Ibiki suggested absently. The Broken Branch was the civilian equivalent to the Konoha Strict Correctional Facility, where ninja cases severe enough to warrant imprisonment outside of Konoha itself, yet mild enough to not warrant being sent to the Hazuka-jo or executed, were imprisoned. Whereas the KSCF was in the middle of an active volcano, the Broken Branch was in the middle of the largest lake in Hai no Kuni, as the water walking exercise was usually beyond the skills of even chakra-active civilians. True. Sarutobi nodded magnanimously, and for the civilians among them that will probably be the best idea, but a third of them are retired shinobi, which would make escape a definite possibility. The head of T&I snorted. He sincerely doubted that any of the Spandex Brigade, he made a note to have that nickname appended to their files, could water walk more than 2 steps without losing concentration and taking a swim. Then again, when one was locked in prison, training would likely be one of the few things one could do to pass the time, and even the most out-of-shape retiree was a danger to any other civilian contained in the prison. And their crimes are just barely mild enough to not warrant the KSCF. Plus, in their current shape, I doubt they'd survive the conditions it would put them in. The Hokage mused. Hazuka-jo is of course out of the question, and the internal prison cells are somewhat full at the moment with former members of the Civilian Council, at least until their crimes are fully processed and they can be transferred to the Broken Branch themselves. Ibiki smirked grimly with satisfaction. The retired members of the Civilian Council had thought that their little schemes were all buried and hidden from prying eyes. Well, the ninja counselors had been more than happy to carry out a bit of forensic paperwork and, wouldn't you know it, there was a positive plethora of crimes committed by the former members of the Civilian Council. Double book accounting, bribery, embezzlement of public funds, and other varied and distasteful crimes. It was actually a bit surprising that they'd managed to get away with it for so long. Ibiki personally blamed it on both the chaos surrounding the long-term effects of rebuilding after Kyuubi attack nearly leveled the village, and the focus that was put on keeping an eye out for outside threats after the Hyuga incident. If you focus too much on watching for enemies at the gates, you tend to miss the ones forming within the walls. Then there were the cream of the crop, the conspiracy charges. Conspiracy to undermine the strength of the weapon of the Konohagakure shinobi forces, otherwise known as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Uzumaki Naruto. He thought to himself grimly. While he wasn't a fan of classifying the boy, or any of his fellow shinobi, as if they were a mindless tool, it was what the paperwork required in order to get what needed done. That, and there was a bit of poetic irony at getting the people that had refused to treat the kid as a human being by classifying him as something else. After all, military assets were incredibly important to a shinobi village's survival, and sabotaging them was a capital offense. He wondered how those fat and arrogant former counselors would appreciate a life sentence to Spartan quarters and bland food. Not well, he knew. In an unrelated development, the few remaining troublesome elements on council had hunkered down, likely hoping to wait out the storm. There are still free cells in the maximum security wing, he pointed out. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. The ones designed for a ranked ninja that are suspended above a pit of fire and where the occupants are fed via random duct chutes. Yes. As much as I am tempted to allow it, I cannot. The old man sighed regretfully. Still, I think I can throw together a prison convoy sooner rather than later. Say 2 days. But where to keep them until the former council members are moved? I could see my way to keeping them in T&I. Ibiki offered with a slight shrug. If it's just for 2 or 3 days. Business is slow. That would be very good of you, Ibiki-kun. Sarutobi smiled. Make sure Enko-chan knows that they aren't for her to practice on. Hi. The Tokuho nodded. Enko would pout and complain, but he had long years of practice at ignoring her antics to draw on. How's the kid? He was unharmed by either the chakra mutations or the Spandex Brigade. Sarutobi answered with a sigh. I gave him a B-rank futon jutsu as a reward for doing well, although he was irritated that all of his hard work in Training Ground 13 was negated thanks to a bunch of idiots wearing spandex, to use his own words. Ibiki nodded absently. It was a perfectly understandable response to having several months' worth of effort undone in less than a day. Particularly, when it's due to someone else interfering. He still plans to tackle it again? Of course. The Hokage smiled at the memory of the determined set to his surrogate grandson's jaw as he declared his intent to conquer the 13th training ground. Once Naruto-kun sets his mind to something, it is very, very rare that he is dissuaded or prevented from accomplishing it. It's a good trait to have in a shinobi. A lot of the brats these days don't have the grit needed to keep to it. Evie, with your permission, I had better be getting back to tea, and Anko will be getting antsy by now. By all means. Sarutobi nodded. The last time Anko got antsy, she went on a sake and dango binge that took 3 of her monthly paychecks to cover. As Ibiki left the office, Sarutobi regretfully returned his attention to his never-to-be sufficiently bedamned paperwork. He longed for the chance to sit back and read one of Jiraiya-kun's masterpieces, Icha Icha, but the necessities of this damn job prevented him from doing so until after lunch, at the earliest. Uzumaki Naruto's apartment. Amikage Apartments. A single eyebrow twitched as one Uzumaki Naruto stared at the display in front of him, which persistently insisted that there was still a good 6 hours left before the update was complete. Whatever a system update was when it was at home. Og, he groaned, what a pain in the ass. Looking around his living room, he got up and padded, dressed in his relatively new training clothes, into a modestly sized room that had been the smaller bedroom of the apartment. He had converted it into a sort of armory shortly after moving in. All of his kunai and shuriken were stored here, when he wasn't at the academy or in a training ground, which freed up room in his inventory. Also, there was an older mannequin that had what Tenten and her father referred to as the storm armor on it. Naruto had placed the updated armored shoulder pad atop the top section after he had received it from the weapons mad girl. He had to admit that the dark royal blue of the suit looked intimidating. He doubted that he'd bother with the suit for the lowly D ranks that would make up the majority of a genin's early introduction to the life of a shinobi. He'd noticed several groups of genin running around doing various chores while being supervised by a jonin and had, thanks to his boosted int, connected the dots. Thank you, gamer. He'd have to find a suitable D-rank outfit, which required another visit to the Higurashi store at some point. After accidentally calling Tenten, Ten-chan, the previous day, he was a bit worried about that. Girls, in his experience, hated it when you called them by a nickname that they hadn't given you permission to use. Resting on a rack next to the suit were Sumair and Tsubaki, his dual Tonto. He was still only level 14 thanks to the stupid update, and he wanted to use them in anger, against actual enemies rather than target kun dummies. He stared longingly at them before sighing and heading to practice his fuinjutsu and calligraphy. 6 hours of practice later, Dane. Looking up from a stack of Type 1 storage scrolls that he had churned out in the past few hours, Naruto grinned as he saw a screen appear with 2 simple words on it. Update complete. Finally, he yelled and pressed the screen, making it disappear and another one appear in its place. Thank you for your patience. The gamer has finished updating. Any changes relevant to you are listed below. Jutsu that have been fully leveled or a level 80 plus can now be invoked without vocal intonation. It will add 10 CP to the chakra cost, however. You will now be assigned up to 5 daily quests each day. Completion of these quests before the end of the day grants you a cash reward in addition to the quest rewards, as well as a 10% chance at receiving a rare jutsu, weapon or item of clothing at the end of the week if all 7 days worth of daily quests are completed. Random encounters will now be further randomized, with random numbers of monsters depending on your level. The actions of the Spandex Brigade have raised the levels at Training Ground 13 to account for your current strength. As this is through no fault of your own, your level cap has been raised to level 17 until you graduate as an apology. The relationship system has been updated, with females possessing a heart next to their names that will be colored to indicate their affection for you. Black for negative feelings, gray for neutral feelings, blue for positive feelings, and pink for romantic feelings. Additionally, if that person is in love with you, the heart will expand and contract slowly. Note that the color indicates only the general area of the person's feelings for you, not the exact level. For that, please regard the relationship screen. At the end of the day, you will be shown a list of all levels earned in skills and jutsu on that day. This is to allow you to gain an overall grasp of your leveling habits. A copy of all jutsu that you know has been placed in your inventory so you can find them and then inform the Hokage. These duplicates cannot be absorbed to learn a jutsu or improve your understanding of the jutsu. This will also be done for all future jutsu that you learn. Naruto whistled. Those were some impressive updates. He didn't understand why the entire gamer needed to be disabled to have all of these updates put in, as it had that auto-update thingy, didn't it? Meh, didn't matter. Closing the window, an eyebrow twitched as yet another window popped up in its place. Calculating levels gained over the last 12 hours. Reading Konohagakure Core Eido's logs. Reading activity logs of designate Uzumaki Naruto, the gamer. Calculating accumulated experience, estimating levels. Done. Calligraphy has gained 2 levels. Basic Fuinjutsu has gained 2 levels. Cooking has gained a level. Detect Bloodlust has gained a level. Intermediate Hokage Taijutsu has gained a level. Observe has gained a level. Futon Senfukyu has gained a level. Doden Gansetsukan has gained a level. Holy crap, Naruto whistled. Now that's impressive. Oh, the jutsu Gigi gave me yesterday. Stampeding into his bedroom, he grabbed the scroll from where he'd left it resting on his nightstand and grinned as the usual window popped up. You have acquired the Futon Fujinheki Jutsu Scroll. Do you wish to learn this? Note: you are now limited to learning 3 jutsu per day. Regular skills are not limited in this manner. A duplicate will be placed in your inventory. Ah man. Naruto complained before shrugging. He couldn't actually remember ever getting more than 3 jutsu scrolls a day anyway, so it wasn't that big of a deal at the moment. With that thought in his mind, he hit the Y button. As always, it was a beautiful sight to see the scroll dissolve into blue shards and spiral around his body before vanishing inside his chest. But he also saw a tendril of blue shards entering a space that he usually pulled his inventory items from to his right. You have learned Futon Fujinheki Futon Fujinheki active LV1 00.00. Wind style. Wind blade wall is an advanced application of wind elemental manipulation that initially creates a wall made from condensed wind in front of the user. This is one of the wall techniques, with the others being Doden, Doryuheki, Sweden, Suijinheki and Kaden, Karyuheki. There is no wall technique for Raiden Jutsu. With time and experience, the user can strengthen the wall and even make it cut anyone or anything that touches it with thousands of wind blades that run across its surface, as well as erecting it anywhere within the user's line of sight. Hand signs. Dragon bird dragon rat dragon bird range. 1 meter from user. Creates a meter-long, foot-wide and meter-tall wall of wind between the user and the enemy. Has 55 durability points. Weak against Kaden Jutsu, doubling the damage of any such jutsu that passes through it. Very effective against Raiden Jutsu. Damage suffered from such jutsu reduced by half. Costs 67 CP to activate and 14 CP per minute to maintain. Naruto winced a bit as the amount of knowledge needed for the powerful wind jutsu flowed into his mind and caused a mild headache. This was only the second B-rank jutsu he had ever learned, so it wasn't all that surprising that learning the details of such a powerful jutsu would cause a bit of pain, at least until he got used to it. I can't wait to give this a try. Naruto GR. He pulled out a few scroll racks and stacked the scrolls from his inventory on them, with a rack dedicated to each level of jutsu. The E-rank scrolls held the Henge, Nawanuke, Kawarimi and Kakorami no jutsu, with most of the rest falling into the C-rank jutsu section. He idly wondered why more jutsu weren't in the D-rank section as he placed his 2 B ranks in their rack. Quite a few seemed underpowered to be C rank, but he recalled that power wasn't solely what determined jutsu rankings. There was also chakra consumption, chakra control requirements, adaptability, and other criteria that determined the rank of a jutsu. Okay, destructive power was a pretty big benchmark of the rank of a jutsu, ninjutsu anyway. But Naruto had learned of the other ways people used when ranking jutsu. Well then, let's go and see how different the training ground is. The blonde orphan muttered and headed for his armory. He grabbed his kunai holster and filled it with projectiles, live ones, before turning to regard Tsubaki and Sumair. As he wasn't an actual ninja yet, he legally couldn't walk around with weapons strapped to him, aside from kunai and shuriken. But the loophole was quite simple: storage scrolls. He grabbed his tanto and sealed them inside a scroll, sliding it inside his lesser Fujin jacket's pocket before heading out. The glares from the civilian populace had increased. which was a scary thing to happen considering they had been on death glares beforehand. Naruto could almost feel his detect bloodlust skills express bar rising like a barometer in the desert at midday. Gotta love the wonderful glares from those ever so lovable civilians. He smirked to himself. Naruto knew that his bloodthirst detection skill had saved his ass several times and that the civilians glaring at him had helped to level it up quite nicely. Those little nuggets of information would probably give any and all of those who glared at him a heart attack. The smug grin on his face made several of those people glaring at him redouble their glares in fury. Detect bloodlust has leveled up, LV9 LV10, he. Irony, you are a wonderful bitch sometimes, particularly when you're on my side. Naruto thought to himself as he purposely added a little skip to his step, wondering absently just how much extra skill grinding he could pull out of this. Gate into Training Ground 13. Naruto's eyebrow twitched as he heard the snarls of monsters inside the training ground. He was really hoping that his GG punished those morons of the Spandex Brigade for undoing all of his hard work on the training ground, and even ended up making it worse. Reaching out, Naruto tapped the gate and made the window appear. Reading it made him growl in irritation. Training Area 13. Which area do you want to enter? Area 1, LV12+, Area 2, LV13+, Area 3, LV14+. Area 4, LV15+, Area 5, LV16+, Area 6, LV17+. Area 7, LV19+, Area 8, LV20+, Area 9, LV21+. Area 10, LV22+, Area 11, LV24+, Area 12, LV25+. Area 13, LV27+. The levels of the individual areas hadn't just gone up, they'd shot up like weeds. Area 13 had previously been restricted to level 20 and over, and now it was level 27 and over. Gah. He was going to have to prank someone when he got out of this place just to blow off some steam. He was so pissed. Gamer's mind activated. Calmly does it. Calmly does it. He chanted to himself as his temper was forcefully brought to heel. Say what you will, but that power was just too damn useful at times. Reaching out, he jabbed Area 1 foot, and the gate creaked open, just as eerily as it had done the first time. Squaring his shoulders and palming a handful of shuriken in each hand, Naruto advanced into the first sub-area. In terms of appearance, the forest hadn't changed, but the atmosphere was slightly oppressive. He could almost feel the malice coming from the chakra mutations in the place. Okay, so the original monsters here were squirrels, he muttered as he advanced. Wonder if that's different now. Skirting around the trees, Naruto spotted an iron-banded wooden chest sitting at the base of an especially thick tree that he could have sworn hadn't been there the last time he'd been through the sub-area. Evidently the chakra saturation had mutated some of the trees as well now. Cautiously approaching the chest, the blonde boy barely touched it when his detect bloodthirst skill screamed at him to dodge to the left. Throwing himself to the side, Naruto gaped at what had lunged at him. It was, superficially, a rabid red squirrel, except it was as large as the more powerful, gnashing gray squirrels, and had several bone plates across its body that seemed to act like armor in addition to the razor-sharp claws and fangs. LV12 ravening rabid red squirrel. So the monsters getting powered up added a word to their names? Weird. With a roll, a jump and two well-trained flicks of his wrists, Naruto pelted the squirrel with 10 shuriken all at once from a meter in the air, something he had never tried before. Usually it was only 3 shuriken per hand, not 5, so he was looking forward to seeing if he developed a skill from it. He could have tried to create it at the shurikenjutsu range at his apartment building, but he had discovered that it took ages to make a skill using repeated actions outside of combat, whereas in the heat of combat, they developed in a few fights, which could be as short as 10 minutes or as long as an hour. The threat of being harmed by the chakra mutations was somehow not a concern for Naruto. The giant chakra mutation, now the size of a large dog, shrieked as several of the metal-throwing stars pelted its body, sinking deep into its flesh. Once it recovered, it glared at Naruto and bared its fangs before pouncing at him claws first. Drawing a pair of kunai, Naruto danced around the mutation, scoring cut after cut on it while avoiding the swipes of its claws and froth-filled mouth. Although it did score a couple of glancing blows on him, the ravening rabid red squirrel finally fell, covered in cuts. You have defeated a ravening rabid red squirrel. You gained 300 express. As a result of a specific action, you have learned the cluster throw skill. Cluster throw, active, LV1, 00.00. Throw enough mud at a wall, and some of it will stick. That is the basis behind this little technique. It is only usable with shuriken and kunai. By throwing 5 shuriken, kunai from each hand, you can deal great damage to the enemy. While it is possible to combine this technique with quick draw techniques, it is impossible to gain the full effect from them without possessing a holster on each leg. 50% chance to fumble the shuriken. Adds +2 to the damage of each shuriken that strikes its target. User suffers from an aim penalty of -5 to hit at long and medium ranges. As a result of repeated actions, you have learned the Short Blades Mastery skill. Short Blades Mastery, passive, LV1, 00.00. A short blade is defined as any bladed weapon the length of a tanto or shorter. These weapons include tanto, yoroidoshi, kabutowari, kaiken and kunai. All of these weapons are seen as being weak or useless compared with larger weapons, such as swords, spears or even maces, but in the hands of a master, these short weapons can be just as deadly. Adds +1 to all damage dealt by the user while wielding short blades. All skills involving short-bladed weapons have a 5% higher experience gain. The chance of learning skills involving short blades is raised by 10% while wielding them. Okay, this is so damn cool. Naruto grinned. Now what's in this chest? Opening it was rather interesting. Golden light shone from the contents for a moment before dimming and fading away, revealing a belt with a bronze circular buckle, a stack of Ryo notes and a necklace shaped like a biwa? Belt of lesser improved muscular regeneration, accessory. A belt that uses a cunning application of fuinjutsu to enhance the growth and development of the user's muscles. At least that was attempted. What Tem actually got was a belt that improved the regeneration of the muscles after exertion. Needless to say, he wasn't happy about creating this by accident, but it still sold well. His naming sense sucked though. Doer. 60/60ths while worn, the user's training to do with STR has an increased effect, improving by 25%. Charm of Benzaden, accessory Benzaden, commonly known as Benton of the Seven Lucky Gods, is commonly depicted with a musical instrument, typically either a biwa or a vina. This charm has been blessed by one of her priests and calls upon her aspect as a goddess of monetary fortune to bring about good luck in monetary gains. This effect raises the amount of money the wearer finds in treasure chests and from fallen monsters. Raises monetary loot from treasure chests and monsters by 10%. Useful. He commented as he pulled the necklace on and snapped the belt closed around his waist before picking up the cash, which looked a bit thicker than it did before he put the necklace on. You gain 450 Ryo. Well then, let's get to clearing out this area. Naruto grinned as he collected the loot from the fallen squirrel. Just some Ryo. The act of clearing out the first sub-area of TG-13 was somewhat cathartic for Naruto, who was feeling more than slightly irritated at the Spandex Brigade's stupidity. Hadn't they ever been told not to use ninjutsu in a chakra-saturated area like TG-13 before? It boggled belief. He took down 3 more, ravening rabid red squirrels, in quick succession, suffering only minor wounds in doing so, about 50 HP all told. After he collected the loot from the last corpse, more Ryo, all he'd been getting from the squirrels, he suddenly found himself in the middle of a clearing and facing 3 chakra mutations. 2 ravening rabid red squirrels. And what looked like a more heavily mutated version of the gnashing gray squirrel. This one had very, very large fangs and an equally large head to carry them. LV-13 nasty gnashing gray squirrel. What is with the alliterating naming sense here? Shaking off that thought, Naruto charged in with a kunai in each hand. With a snarl, the gray squirrel seemed to order the smaller red ones forward to countercharge him. Dodging 2 red squirrels at once was hard work, much harder than when he only had a single opponent. Fortunately for him, the chakra mutations had all the teamwork of a slab of butter and a saw, i.e. none whatsoever. This allowed him to make the 2 squirrels attack each other some of the time when they swiped and missed him. Eventually, Naruto managed to wear the two down and jam kunai into the back of their heads, killing them. He had a moment to bask in the glory before he got bowled over by the charge of the nasty gnashing gray squirrel. He was forced to leave his kunai in the heads of the ravening rabid red squirrels, as he grappled with the gray monster, which was at least half again as big as its weaker companions. Get, whack, off, wham, whack, me, Naruto roared as he punched the chakra mutation's throat multiple times to emphasize his words. At the last blow, the squirrel finally retreated back with a leap, spitting out flecks of blood that stained its massive teeth. Fuck this. Naruto growled and ran through some hand signs, futon, senfukyu. Bringing his right hand up to his mouth, he fired off 3 wind spheres at the squirrel. It managed to dodge 2, but the third slammed into its tail, severing it when the projectile detonated on impact. The wail of pain from the mutation was deafening. You have blown off a limb. Nasty gnashing gray squirrel is now suffering from the badly bleeding status. Naruto blinked at that. Last time he checked, spiraling wind sphere didn't do that. Making a note to check the entry for the jutsu later, the blonde orphan leapt over to the dead squirrels and ripped his kunai out of their skulls. A passive glance told him that they wouldn't be much good as thrown weapons thanks to the blood all over them. The red squirrels seemed to have developed some kind of thick, sticky blood that reduced the throwing damage of the weapons by quite a bit. That gave him an idea. Discarding them, the academy student ran through more hand signs. Suiden Ninpo. Mizuame Bakuho. He spat a great wad of the sticky water at the squirrel, who was still shrieking in agony. The massive wad of sticky goop, about the size of a toddler, slammed into the face of the monster with a wet, thud sound. With a muffled growl, the squirrel tried to bite through the taffy-like substance, only to find its jaws trapped in the goo. It then tried to tear the Mizuame Bakuho from its face, only to discover that doing so trapped its forepaws and left it all but helpless. Visions of all the pranks he could do with this stuff danced through Naruto's mind as he threw kunai and shuriken at the squirrel until it died. Oh boy, he was so looking forward to this. You have slain a nasty gnashing gray squirrel. You gained 450 express. You have leveled up, LV14 LV15. You have 5 attribute points to spend. Suiden Ninpo. Mizuame Bakuho, has leveled up, LV2 LV3. Futon. Senfukyu no Jutsu, has leveled up, LV2 LV3. Shuriken Jutsu, has gained a level, LV15 LV16. As a result of repeated actions, you have gained access to the evasion skill. Evasion, passive, LV4, 04.51. Being able to tank the attack of an opponent is all very well, but why do that if you don't have to dodge, swerve, evade and jump around your enemies as if they weren't even there? Passively raises the chance to evade the taijutsu and bukajutsu attacks of the enemy by 24.5%. Passively raises the chance to evade the shurikenjutsu attacks of the enemy by 20%. Passively raises the chance to evade the ninjutsu attacks of the enemy by 15%. Finally, Naruto practically screamed in joy. Now he could finally wield his tanto, and maybe his Greater Fujin t-shirt, as well. Then, something occurred to him. Hey, wait a minute. Why the hell did I only fight a gray squirrel? A window popped up right on cue. Chapter 16. Berserk Fox Squirrel. Secret revealed. Higurashi Home Tenten jumped as her mother's hand landed on her shoulder. She had been spacing out as she polished a kunai and so hadn't heard her approach. Okawa-san. Sorry dear. The shopkeeper smiled. She was starting to feel a bit concerned for her daughter. The girl had been absently polishing the same kunai for the past hour while staring out into space. Is there something wrong, Tenten? The bun-haired girl blinked before looking away, a blush on her face. You could tell? Considering how you've been polishing the same kunai for the past hour, I think even your father could tell. Kanae said dryly, making her daughter flush deeper in embarrassment. I went to deliver the last part of the storm suit to Naruto yesterday. Tenten put the kunai, which had been polished to the point that the metal had been worn thin and nearly broken, down and picked up another one as she spoke, her eyes not leaving the metal. Yes, Tatsuhiko said he'd sent you to act as a delivery girl. The older woman nodded. Did something happen? Naruto called me Ten-chan by accident, and he blushed. The aspiring weapons mistress admitted. I kinda blushed too. It was nice. Kanae had to suppress a smile at that. It was obvious that Tenten was growing fond of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and that he was growing fond of her as well. She hadn't been happy with Neji being the focus of her daughter's affections. From her own interactions with the young Hyuga prodigy, the boy had seemed quite self-absorbed, which was never good in a relationship. Ah, to be young again, she sighed. Okawa-san, Tenten whined. Now Ten-chan, it isn't the first time someone's called you that. Kanae said with a small smile. Is all this embarrassment from you getting called it by a boy, or is it because he called you it without your permission? The Genin Kunoichi blushed again. Kinda sorta both. He's the first boy in my age range to treat me like a serious shinobi and as a friend without looking down on me. Even Lee does it in a weird way when I can't keep up with his and Guy's training sessions. Naruto just doesn't. She was honest enough with herself to admit that she was, without question, the weakest member of Team Guy. While capable enough with melee weapons, her specialty had always been ranged combat, which left her vulnerable to the two taijutsu specialists that she had as teammates. Both Neji and Lee were at least Jonin level when it came to their particular taijutsu styles, but at her best she'd only put herself as mid-chunin level with her own fighting style, and even then the Soko-ken was relatively weak compared to the Goken and Juken. Granted, when it came to Shurikenjutsu, her own specialty, she was almost Jonin level herself, while Neji and Lee both barely being Chunin level. Unfortunately, she could never fully bring that skill to bear against her teammates for one simple reason: speed. Lee and Neji were both insanely fast, easily closing in on Jonin levels, while she was Chunin level at best. That meant the two could close the distance between them faster than she could move to keep it open. Even worse, a lot of the shinobi she interacted with regarded shurikenjutsu as a distraction, or a way to kill those who weren't versed in the use of chakra, like bandits and low-level samurai. That it was her forte made people look down on her. But Naruto didn't. He respected her and liked her. It was flattering, if she were being honest. Yes, he was only an academy student, but he had an arsenal of ninjutsu that most chunin would envy and was a chakra powerhouse. Just being nearby when he was using jutsu made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end simply because of the sheer amount of chakra she could feel pouring out of him. He had been completely unafraid when those Nuke Nin's bags had attacked them and had even taken a life during the whole mess. He had borne it like a champ, which had made her admire him a bit. She certainly hadn't adjusted well to her first kill. It had been a bandit operating out of a forest on the coast of Hai no Kuni. She had thrown a brace of kunai and pierced through his right eye and heart at the same time. He had dropped head with almost no sound and his sightless eyes had bored into her own. She had snapped out of it, forcing the urge to vomit down until after the mission was complete. I would suggest that you take it slow, Tenten. Kanae said gently, drawing the kunoichi from her thoughts. You're both still very young, so just try to be friends with him, although that is likely already the case. Just see how things pan out with Naruto-kun. He is a boy though, so you might have to spell things out for him if you decide that you want to take things further with him. Those words made the blush on her oh so young, oh so sweet daughter's cheeks redouble in strength. Okawa-san. The next day, Naruto's classroom, Konohagakure Ninja Academy. The blonde boy who went by the name of Naruto was lost in thought as he contemplated a multitude of things. The least of which was the grapefruit-sized rapidly beating pink heart next to the name of one Hyuga Hinata. This, his frantic research told him, indicated that the person who bore it was madly in love with him. He had pulled up her status page using his observe skill and was stunned at what it showed. Name: Hyuga Hinata. Class: Hyuga Taijutsu Generalist. Level: 15, next level. 0.00%, level cap. Class up for further level progression. Main title: Academy Student, plus 25% expressed to LV10, sub title: Shy Maiden, plus 25% embarrassment when around non-related males. Age: 12 HP, 4500 CP, 5500 STR, 30 STA, 32. Dex: 60 INT, 55 WIS, 58 LUK. 33 Special Status. Modest Byakugan. +2 Dex. +1 INT. Whis every level. Hyuga Clan Heiress. +25% express to all Jukin Jutsu. Perks. Chakra Control Adept Kind-Hearted Determined. Flaws. Shy Downtrodden dislikes violence. Hyuga Hinata is the clan heiress of the Hyuga clan, one of the oldest and most respected clans in the elemental nations. In her short life, she has come close to being kidnapped, lost her mother during the birth of her younger sister Hanabi and been blamed by her cousin Neji for the sacrifice of his father after her near kidnapping. Looked down upon by most of her family, her confidence crushed and downtrodden. This shy girl takes confidence from watching the one she loves stand strong despite the burdens upon him. The description of her life up until this moment was an education. She lost her mother, was almost kidnapped and some jerk blamed her for that. Naruto remembered that Tenten's other teammate was this Neji character. Maybe once he sorted out the verbal slip-up he had stumbled over with her yesterday, he could ask her what this Neji guy was like. He did his best not to think about the whole love thing. It made him feel weird. Another thing he had been thinking about was Training Ground 13. Thanks to those spandex-clad morons, it had gotten reset and the difficulty of each sub-area within it had gotten jacked up. Not only that, he had to go out and cleanse each sub-area for an entire week to get them out of oversaturation mode. This meant that he had less time for everything else he had to do, including his daily quests, which was irritating. One quest he had received this morning had been to simply attend the academy, while another was to score above 50% in all classwork while at the academy. The rewards were simply small amounts of Ryo and Express. A drop in both buckets as far as he was concerned, but he did them. A chance at a rare piece of equipment or a jutsu scroll wasn't anything to laugh at. To be blunt, he was going to be busy as hell over the next 3 weeks, at least. It sucked, but what could he do? Blow off his training? Hell no. Alright now. Iruka-sensei was saying, today, we will be talking about ninjutsu, starting with the Academy 3. Every ninja academy in existence worth the name teaches those 3. Less common are the so-called, traveling Tenno E-rank jutsu that were commonly used during the Warring Clans period. But advances in technology have rendered over 3/4 of them obsolete. It is still highly recommended for ninja to learn them if possible, as times have also proved that technology can fail. The scarred Chunin turned and started writing on the board, placing the title of the jutsu at the top. Now, who can name one of the traveling 10 for me? As expected, Sakura's hand shot up. Aside from her, only Choji and Shino raised their hands. Yes, Sakura-chan? Kaden. Hibana, fire style. Spark, the pinkette said with a small smile. It was used to light kindling for campfires. Correct. Iruka nodded. It is a weak enough jutsu that even those without a fire affinity could easily learn it. Out of all of the 10, Hibana is the most commonly known one due to the utility of it. Anyone else? Sweden. Roki, water style. Filtrate, Choji offered. It cleans water of impurities, but only a bowlful at a time. Correct. The scarred Chunin nodded. Roki was used before we developed filtration seals for water canteens, but I would advise you to learn it regardless. Shino? Doden. Anna, earth style. Hole. The Aburame air stated softly. It is used to create a foot-square hole in the ground commonly used as a fire pit for a campfire. Again, correct. Iruka wrote the 3 jutsu mentioned on the board. Anna was and is used for semi-permanent camps while on border patrol missions, where a simple circle of stones is less desired. Anyone else? There were no others. Okay, 3 out of 10. The Chunin side. The other 7 are Raiden. Saidenki, lightning style. Static charge, which was used to kill blood-sucking insects before the advent of insect repellents, many of which we can thank our own Aburame clan for. Futon. Soyokaze, wind style. Gentle breeze, which is used to push a small amount of wind into an area, providing a through draft in a building, before the advent of air conditioning. Futon. Shosha, wind style. Deodorize, which erases weak to moderate scents from all but scenting abilities on the level of the Inuzuka clan or their ninkin. Kaden. Kisu, fire style. Extinguish, which is used to eliminate any heat or sparks from a campfire once you wanted to go out completely. Doden. Umaru, Earth style. Fill in, which closes up holes such as the type made by Anna. Sweden. Ketsuro, water style. Condensation, which draws water from the air to a specific location within a meter of the user. Useful for if you aren't near a river or at sea. And finally, Doden. Wana, Earth style. Snare, which creates a small pit with a thin covering of earth over the top of it, used as either a way of capturing small animals for food or as a defense for around a campsite, at least against those enemies who are unskilled in the use of chakra. Naruto copied down the details of the traveling 10 and wondered why he hadn't heard of them before now. He actually put his hand up and asked that. A good question, Naruto. Iruka nodded. As the 10 aren't combat-oriented like the 3 are, they get considerably less fame and are thus ignored by most stories and fables. Any veteran ninja will tell you, however, that the 10 are just as important as the 3. After that, Mizuki passed out a scroll to each student that had the traveling 10 jutsu in it. Noticing a slight knowing sneer on the blue-haired teacher's face, Naruto used observe on the scroll. Doctored traveling 10 jutsu scroll. A heavily altered version of the traveling 10 jutsu scroll that has key text portions and diagrams removed from the 10 jutsu it contains. They will either not work at all or blow up in the user's face. A weary sigh left Naruto as he shook his head at Mizuki's antics. The blue-haired Chunin sensei had sabotaged his taijutsu. Now he was trying to sabotage his ninjutsu. Lovely, just freaking peachy. As if the blonde orphan didn't already have enough to do as it was. Now he had to deal with this. End of the week. Sub-Area 1. Training Ground 13. Naruto dove under the slavering maw of a ravening rabid red squirrel and sliced up with Tsubaki, gutting the beast in mid-flight. The yowl of pain from the squirrel was almost enough to shatter his eardrums. You have inflicted a gutting wound on a ravening rabid red squirrel. It is fatal. Time until death. 10:59. Even as the chakra mutant landed on the ground, actually crashing would be a better word for it, Naruto was already moving in for the kill. Bleeding to death was not a pleasant way to go, at least according to Iruka sensei, so mercy strokes were encouraged in these kinds of situations. You have slain ravening rabid red squirrel, x10, you earned 3000 express. You have slain gnashing nasty gray squirrel, x5, you earned 2250 express. Wiping his blades on the fur of the nearest dead mutant, Naruto sheathed Tsubaki and Sumaira at his back and hit the loot all button. He got a bunch of squirrel fur and bones, with some Ryo and even another jutsu scroll. What's this? Ninpo. Kitsunrisu no Binsho, ninja art. Nimbleness of the fox squirrel. He muttered before actually opening it and scanning the description. It was a jutsu that used the user's chakra to boost the user's dexterity while active. Not only that, once it got to higher levels, there was a chance to develop more techniques based on the abilities of a squirrel. The more DEX that he had, the higher the chance of him hitting things with shurikenjutsu was, as well as granting a bonus to all of his skills that used dex to determine their effects. Evasion would get a bonus at a higher level, for example. And, with the amount of chakra that he had available, he didn't see why he couldn't keep the jutsu active 24/7. At least while he was awake, anyway. You have acquired the Ninpo, Kitsunrisu no Binsho Jutsu scroll. Do you wish to learn this? Why? N hitting, why? With eagerness, Naruto saw the blue light of the jutsu scroll divide in two, with half going into his inventory and the other half entering him. Congratulations! You have learned Ninpo, Kitsunrisu no Binsho. Ninpo, Kitsunrisu no Binsho, active, LV1, 00.00. Ninja art. Nimbleness of the fox squirrel was developed by a small clan who entered Konoha a decade after Senju Hashirama's famous battle with Uchiha Madara. They were the Kimono clan, a group of non-blood-related ninja who had banded together due to a shared interest in developing jutsu similar to the Inuzuka's Giju Ninpo, Shikyaku no Jutsu, allowing them to mimic the actions and traits of animals, without the feral instincts and appearance of the dog clan. They mysteriously vanished after the Second Great Shinobi War, leaving nothing behind except their empty clan compound. This jutsu allows one to mimic the agility and nimbleness of a fox squirrel, a breed known for their agility, to increase the amount in the dex stat. Costs 15 CP, minute. Grants a dex bonus of +5. It seemed a bit lacking, but then again it was only at level 1, which was the equivalent of an E or D ranked jutsu. You couldn't expect that much. Hey, this would be good for someone who uses their dex stat a lot, like Tenten, Naruto realized with a grin. I'll give her the copy as an apology for calling her Ten-chan, without permission, Gomi. Planned safely in his mind, Naruto looked around. That had been the third group of squirrels he had defeated today, but it was the largest by far. If he was a betting man, he'd bet on the area boss showing up soon. In a flash of movement, Naruto was suddenly standing in a very familiar clearing, where the husk of a split tree stood. This was where he had faced the berserk fox squirrel, the first time. Knowing what was about to happen, Naruto drew Tsubaki and Sumire and activated the chakra nagashi. Futon jutsu through them. A blue glow surrounded his blades and he could almost hear the shriek of the wind as it was formed into invisible blades along the edge of his tanto. He also activated his new ninpo, Kitsunrisu no Bensho. You never knew when you'd need a bit of extra speed and it waspe the chakra for it. As the last time, a tree erupted from the ground, with a giant squirrel perched atop the topmost branches. Unlike last time, the tree itself was warped and evil looking. Then Naruto took a good look at the area boss. LV-19 Bloody Berserk Fox Squirrel, Shadow of the Fox. Oh, fuck. Naruto gulped. 4 levels above him and it actually had a title now, as opposed to how it had been when it had been level 7. This did not bode well. Not only that, it looked even more buff than last time, which was saying something. The version that Neko-san had ever so casually beheaded had been more ripped than a professional bodybuilder. With a bestial snarl that sounded as if it came from a far larger beast, the superpowered chakra mutant leapt at Naruto with speed that exceeded his expectations. Fast. He dodged to the side and lashed out with his twin tanto in a scissor motion, the invisible blades biting deep into the beast's flesh. Seemingly able to completely ignore the chakra-infused blades in its side, the squirrel lashed out with one talon-bearing paw, forcing Naruto back again. For a few minutes, Naruto struggled with the bloody berserk fox squirrel, making full use of his evasion skill and counter-attacking when he could. But the chakra mutant was just too fast. The blonde boy leapt over one scything talon to land on the back of the squirrel and proceeded to stab the fuck out of it with first one, then both of his tanto multiple times, making the area boss shriek with rage and pain. Whump! Naruto felt something hit the side of his body and then a brief sensation of weightlessness before tumbling side over side across the ground. Damn it, he'd forgotten about the damn tail. You were struck by the tail of the bloody berserk fox squirrel. You lose 100 HP, status, defense down, inflicted for 120 seconds. Okay, seriously? What the fuck? Naruto gasped as he flipped to his feet. Taking advantage of the distance between him and the boss, he sheathed his blades and ran through 2 series of hand signs in a row. Doden. Iwa Bunshin no Jutsu. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Erupting from the ground at his command, 20 rock clones shot towards the surprised boss monster, with the 8 shadow clones starting a barrage of Gansetsukan, Dangan and Senfukyu that rained down on the oversized monster. Naruto noticed that his rock clones were using chakra nagashi. Doden, in order to further increase the strength of their rock tanto blades and Gansetsukan strikes. He hadn't realized that you could use the Doden variant of the chakra nagashi jutsu through a construct like the Gansetsukan. You learn something new every day. Shaking his head and pulling his mind out of that line of thought, the blonde boy drew his tanto again and joined in with his rock clones to attack the bloody berserk fox squirrel, up close and personal. It wasn't easy due to the speed and surprising agility of the beast, but the rock clones and Naruto managed somehow, especially with the rear line fire support of the shadow clones. The steel hard hide of the squirrel was literally covered in cuts, some deep enough to pierce through to the other side at thin enough points. But the damn monster just refused to keel over and die. How stubborn was this bastard? Craters ripped open in its flesh from the Senfukyu, limbs pierced through with Gansetsukan, and several close calls with the Dangan. The sheer tenacity of an area boss was not to be underestimated. Boss, look! One shadow clone yelled when the red chakra of the Kyuubi enveloped the bloody berserk fox squirrel. Just as expected, it must be on its last legs to use its trump card. Naruto quickly dropped back out of close combat range to summon more Iwabunshin. The ones already out had to be running low on chakra, and they would be crunched in a second once the stronger and faster chakra mutant got its claws into them. Your clones take damage from the corrosive shroud of the beast. The blonde boy was suddenly very glad that he had retreated. That hadn't happened last time. He could even see the red chakra eating into the bodies of the clones, damaging them every time they went within a foot of the hulking monstrosity. Swiftly ordering only the mostly untouched rock clones to remain in close combat range, Naruto had the others pull back and add to the ninjutsu barrage, pelting the bloody berserk fox squirrel with Gansetsukan and Dangan, as well as kunai and shuriken made from rock that had been created with them. Such was the sheer volume of missiles being hurled at it. The area boss was actually forced back. The damage wasn't all that much now though, as the chakra shroud, in addition to boosting its physical stats and damaging anything nearby, also seemed to be acting as some kind of chakra-based armor. The Dangan got through it easily, as there was too much mass for it to corrode away quickly enough, and Gansetsukan were still hurting it, though less than before, but the shuriken and kunai made of rock were now proving to be as useful as a chocolate kettle. Finally, the squirrel leapt away from the clones and opened its mouth. Bits of dark red and blue chakra gathered into an almost colorless ball the size of a grapefruit in front of it, in every danger sense that Naruto possessed went off, shrieking at him to not get hit by that thing at all costs. Leaping away from his clones, the blonde boy barely managed to throw himself behind a nearby tree when the bloody berserk fox squirrel fired the ball of chakra. It plowed through his clones like a scythe through a field of corn, smashing the rock clones into pebbles and dispersing the shadow clones into chakra smoke. When it sped past the tree that Naruto was hiding behind, the density of the chakra ball made him very much unnerved. If that had hit me, I'd be dead. Naruto watched horrified fascination as the ball of condensed chakra slammed through several trees before blowing up like a ball of explosive notes on steroids. He had to flip himself around the tree to avoid the shockwave of the blast, as well as several bits of wood that may as well have been crude kunai from the speed they went at. He heard several of them thunk into the wood and stay there. He didn't need to be as smart as Sakura-chan to know they would have made holes the size of an Akamichi's finger in him had he not moved. Boss fired, chakra bullet, boss now suffers from stun. A savage grin crossed Naruto's face, payback time. He charged forwards, drawing his tanto as he did, and went head to head with the dazed beast. He cut, slashed, stabbed and impaled the damn monster in a somewhat frenzied rush. His last two strikes took out an eye with Sumair and sliced open its jugular vein with Tsubaki respectively. With a choked sound, the bloody berserk fox squirrel collapsed to the ground, twitching for a few moments before they faded and the body stilled. Congratulations! You slew the bloody berserk fox squirrel. You earned 3,500 express. Congratulations! You have leveled up, LV15 LV16. You have 5 attribute points to spend. Short Blades Mastery has leveled up, LV3 LV4. Evasion has leveled up, LV2 LV3, Futon. Senfukyu no Jutsu has leveled up, LV3 LV4. Doden. Dangan no Jutsu has leveled up, LV4 LV5. Doden. Gansetsukan no Jutsu has leveled up, LV7 LV8. Detect Bloodlust has leveled up, LV10 LV11. As a result of repeated actions, you have gained the Backstab skill. Backstab, passive, LV1, 00.00. As a ninja, you do not charge in headfirst, yelling a battle cry and fighting honorably like a samurai. No, you are a shadow warrior, who uses stealth, guile and trickery to defeat your foes. At least you're supposed to be, anyway. This skill rewards that by granting you increased damage to your strikes as long as your target is unaware of your presence. Take a hint. All attacks made while your target is unaware of your presence have all damage boosted by +10. All attacks made while using stealth skills to mask your presence from your target are granted an additional damage boost of +5 and an addition. As a result of a specific action, you have created the skill, self-taught Nito Ryu Tanto Kenjutsu. Hasamagiri. Self-taught Nito Ryu Tanto Kenjutsu. Hasamagiri, active, LV1, 00.00. Created by Uzumaki Naruto in a fight against a vastly superior opponent, the scissor cut technique cuts the enemy with both blades overlapping like scissors an instant before impact, doubling the damage they deal. Costs 40 CP to use. When used, the strike multiplies the damage dealt by 2 should the blows land. Grants a +5 chance to inflict the bleeding status effect on the target, as well as a +5 chance to crit. Phew, Naruto whistled. That was a couple of pretty good skills he'd developed. Although he had to wonder about the way that first description was written. It sounded like someone was dissing him. He looked up as a crimson-red light emerged from the corpse of the squirrel and shot at him. He had no chance to do more than blink in shock before the red chakra slammed into him. You have absorbed the remaining chakra of the Kyuubi no Kitsune from the bloody berserk fox squirrel. You permanently gain +200 CP. The boy had been staggered by the impact, but his eyes widened as he read the notice. What the? I thought that stuff was corrosive. Why aren't I dead and why did I absorb it in the first place? Much to his surprise, another pop-up appeared. Help feature, active. Biju chakra is attracted to stronger reservoirs of similar Biju chakra unless contained within a specially sealed vessel or a living being. That you absorbed the chakra of the nine-tailed fox logically means you have said tailed beast sealed within you. Have a nice day. Naruto stared blankly at the screen with a deadpan expression on his face. Seriously? What the fuck? Chapter 17. Revelation of Truth. The next day, Naruto's apartment. How the heck did I get back here? Naruto muttered aloud as he started looking around. He was lying on his bed with his usual green sleeping cap on his head and pajamas on. It was an honest question. The last thing he remembered from yesterday was beating that beefed-up fox squirrel and getting that weird-ass message. Naruto had no recall of ever leaving TG-13, let alone getting home, eating, bathing, getting changed and going to bed. Yet it was plainly obvious that he had done all of the above. He grimaced as he remembered the last thing he could recall, being told he had the goddamn nine-tailed fox sealed up inside him by his little gamer system. Had he wandered back in such a daze that he couldn't even remember doing it? It certainly seemed so. As he went about his morning routine, Naruto considered what to do. He had the Kyuubi inside him. That explained why people, the older generation at least, seemed to hate him so much for no reason, even before he started his pranks. Well, the vast majority had anyway. He was man enough to admit that his pranks probably hadn't helped any in that department. That, of course, led the young blonde to wondering just who he should be questioning about this, since it was plainly obvious he needed more information if he ever wanted any peace of mind. His first instinct was Iruka-sensei, but he was only a chunin. There were probably details about it, details Naruto had to know, that the academy teacher wasn't aware of. Iruka was near the top of a very small list of people that Naruto trusted while also being likely to know about his status as the, what had that message called it? Ah yes, Jinchuriki, of the Kyuubi. The sad thing was, there were only about a dozen people that satisfied both categories and sadly, only Iruka and one other were trusted enough that Naruto would accept their words at face value. Well, I guess it's about time I go and talk to Gigi again. He mused aloud. This was not going to be a pleasant conversation. Naruto was already sure of it. Still, he needed to know why. Why did he have the Kyuubi sealed within him? The only person who could have done it was the legendary Yondaime Hokage. But why didn't history, at least the history books he had read in class, say anything about the fox being sealed? Question after question, and a very large whack of hurt betrayal, started to run through his mind before Naruto rather firmly tamped down on them. Gamer's mind, activating and helping him to just that before his emotions started to run rampant. Gigi was the Hokage, first and foremost. He had to have reasons for what he did, and Naruto sincerely hoped that the old man, who had acted as something like a surrogate grandfather for as far back as he could remember, would be willing to discuss them with him. Quest alert. Grab the fox by its tails. You have discovered that you carry the great nine-tailed fox within you, sealed there by the Yondaime Hokage in all likelihood at the cost of his life on your birthday. The best person to ask is your surrogate grandfather, the Hokage. Confront him and get the truth. Quest rewards. Plus 2500 XP. Plus 500 Ryo. Special status changes. Plus. Reputation with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Quest failure. More quest alerts until you do this. Accept. Y. And another quest with no refusal allowed. Naruto had to shake his head as he hit the Y button to make it go away. He could almost swear there was someone pulling this crap for shits and giggles. If there was, the blonde orphan swore he'd find them eventually before giving them a sincere and thorough beating and maybe treat them to a first-hand demonstration of all the jutsu he'd been collecting, as the target dummy. Later Hokage's office, Hokage Tower. A long life as an active-duty shinobi had allowed Sarutobi Hiruzen to develop a number of talents, one of which was a finely tuned sense for when trouble was afoot. It had served him well, both as an active shinobi and as a desk-bound Hokage, and had saved his life several times before, so he'd learned to trust it wholeheartedly. Thus, since that same sense had been ringing constantly since he'd woken up this morning, he was naturally more than a little tense. Then his surrogate grandson walked through the door to his office, his face seemingly carved out of stone into a severe expression, and those same internal alarms started blaring at a condition red level. The last time they'd done that was when he last forgot his and Bawako's anniversary. He'd been on the couch for a month for that. Before he could say anything, Naruto closed the door firmly behind him and began forming signs with his hands. Hiruzen instantly recognized the Konoha field sign language, though he was half surprised the boy already had it down so clearly. Top secret information. Secure room. The internal alarms raised another level, going to code black. Naruto had never been one to hold anything back when it came to speaking with him about anything. For him to go this far, what could it be he wanted to talk about? Deciding that this required looking into, the Hokage simply gave the boy a single nod before tapping a small panel on the side of his desk. This caused the hidden latch to switch and the panel to flip, revealing a black square seemingly burned into the wood. Channeling chakra into the square, which was actually a disguised sealing array, he felt, rather than saw, the network of intricate and powerful seals spring to life around the room. The security system had originally been emplaced by the Nidaime Hokage at his brother's request, with no small help from Lady Mito. Jiraiya and the Yondaime had both worked to update and streamline the various arrays to keep up with any new developments in the sealing arts as well as a form of training for themselves. He remembered that Minato had made planning and designing a complete overhaul of the system a pet project after he became the Hokage. The room is now secure, Naruto-kun, he said in concern as he eyed his favorite orphan worriedly. What is the matter? Gigi, I was in training ground 13 yesterday, trying to cull the first sub-area down to a reasonable number. Naruto started hesitantly. At Sarutobi's encouraging nod, he continued. I just killed my last mutated squirrel when this super mutant leapt out of the woodwork and tried to bite my head off. I'd seen one before, when Neko-san and the others saved me from the Spandex Brigade's stupidity. Neko-san made it look so easy I thought I could fight it, so I did. I managed to wear it down to where it was barely holding on, then it started leaking this evil chakra from all over its body and it formed some kind of chakra cloak around itself. The stuff was so potent that I could frickin' see it. It was this bright red and it practically made my eyes burn just by looking at it. It looked like it was melting through my rock clones just by standing near them. Hiruzen, who'd been listening intently so far, practically bit through the end of his pipe as his body stiffened in shock, and he could feel the 3 Anbu guard hiding in the room doing the same. Chakra often took on properties based on how it was used and who was using it. Depraved and evil men, those who gloried in the darker aspects of humanity, sometimes gave off chakra that felt unpleasant to normal people if they were powerful enough. However, the only chakra Hiruzen had ever heard of that had the same kind of potency that Naruto had just described was that of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The red color simply adds further confirmation. There's no doubt that the creature Naruto had encountered possessed some of the Kyuubi's chakra. Sarutobi mind whirled at lightning speeds as he tried to make sense of what he was hearing. How? A chakra mutant, of course. The fox was radiating chakra at an unimaginable scale when it attacked 12 years ago. There were pockets of residual chakra covering the entire village. I had several dedicated sealing squads searching for months after the days of finding and clearing it out before it could lead to something like this. Some must have nestled deep within the training grounds. The chakra already rampant there would have concealed it if it was small enough. Then it would have simply lain dormant there, festering and growing until it found a strong enough host to infect. I see. The Hokage said aloud, already making plans to have an Anbu squad burn training ground 13 to the ground if they had to in order to find and neutralize the beast before it could grow into something truly dangerous. And how did you escape from it? I didn't, Naruto stated simply. I had my rock and shadow clones swarm the thing until we finally managed to kill it. Hearing this, Sarutobi couldn't help but let out a small breath of relief. Even if Neiko had easily managed to kill a similar creature, something he was going to be sure she was properly rewarded for, it was quite something else for an academy student to kill something that possessed the chakra of one of the 9 Biju. As a chakra mutation, it had likely possessed an instinctive connection to the corrosive chakra that no human, even a true Jinchuriki, could ever possess. On the other hand, it had also been merely an animal, a creature incapable of planning or truly strategizing, being locked only in the present. Any animalistic cunning the beast had possessed before would likely have been completely subsumed by the raging malevolence that seemed to infuse the Kyuubi's chakra, reducing it to rabid frenzy. Of course, that still meant that Naruto had been able to take down a frothing berserker infused with a sliver of power from one of the 9 Biju. That was something he'd be impressed by from a seasoned genin, let alone an academy student. That was well done, Naruto-kun, he praised warmly. Yeah, that isn't the end of it. Naruto added nervously, reaching up to scratch at the back of his head. A tic he'd inherited from his mother, Hiruzen noted, whenever she was nervous or embarrassed. I stayed back after I noticed how it was melting through my rock clones, but when the squirrel died, that same chakra leapt from it to me and just seemed to flow into me. Eyes widening, Sarutobi locked eyes with his surrogate grandson as the boy looked at him imploringly. Gigi, what the heck am I? That chakra wasn't human. Closing his eyes painfully, Sarutobi brought a hand up to cover his eyes as he leaned back in his chair. There was no way out of this. He had to tell Naruto the truth. He briefly contemplated lying, but quickly shook the idea off. While he was certain he'd come up with something believable that would placate the boy, he also knew that the consequences of such a lie, when Naruto eventually learned the truth of his condition, could be disastrous. Also, ever since Naruto had started to develop his unusual abilities, he had also started to display a level of shrewdness that few would have expected from him before. It would make creating a suitable falsehood and maintaining it for any extended period far more difficult. No, he had always intended to tell the boy the truth after he graduated from the academy. Lying now would only delay an inevitable discussion and make it that much more painful. I was hoping that I would be able to postpone this talk until you officially became a shinobi, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen spoke softly, his voice carrying a feeling of tired resignation. Words once spoken cannot be taken back, and the truth can be a terrible burden to bear. Are you prepared for what I am about to tell you, even so? Yes. Naruto nodded firmly. Sarutobi opened his eyes and gazed somberly at him for a moment. Very well. Naruto's perspective. Unfortunately, there are only so many secrets I can reveal to you at this time. His Gigi started out tiredly. What do you mean? Naruto cocked his head to the side in confusion. The part that you asked about is an S-rank secret. The Hokage explained as he sat forward slightly. The only reason that I am able to disclose this information to you is because it pertains directly to your body and life, and even then I am skirting the edge since you have not officially joined the shinobi rosters yet. There are, however, SS and SSS rank secrets to do with you that I legally cannot reveal to you until you reach the rank of Jonin, or Special Jonin at the very least. It is not a matter of whether I want to or not, but that I cannot. That stopped Naruto's incipient protest cold before he could finish thinking about it. S-class secrets were the kind couriers burned before letting an enemy get their hands on them. Sulfur monosulfide class secrets were the kind that battlefields worth of ninja were sacrificed without hesitation to protect. SSS class secrets were the kind that started or stopped wars based on who knew them. That his Gigi was even telling him about the existence of any secrets of that rank to do with him was an immense sign of trust on his surrogate grandfather's part. One that made Naruto feel all warm and fuzzy inside about his Gigi. I understand. The blonde orphan nodded seriously. After peering at him for a moment, Sarutobi nodded and continued. Now then, to start off with, I am certain you have guessed the source of this chakra. Am I correct? Naruto looked sheepish. Kinda. It's the chakra of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, isn't it? Correct. The old man nodded again. Your story starts 12 years ago, on your day of birth, which was also the day that the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. In the history books, the ones in Konoha for the younger generation anyway, it is claimed that the Yondaime sacrificed his life in order to use a kinjutsu that managed to kill the beast. This is plainly a lie. Why couldn't he kill it? Naruto asked curiously. The Kyuubi is not a creature of flesh and blood, Naruto-kun. It is an entity formed purely of chakra given thought and condensed to a point that it take on solid form. The Hokage explained. It is possible to disperse their bodies, though it is by no means an easy feat, and even that does not truly kill them. Their consciousness is linked wholly with their chakra and, given time, that consciousness will draw their chakra back together until it can return to a physical form. It is a process that can take years, or even decades, but eventually they will reform and you are back at square one. But it only showed up 12 years ago. How do you know all this? Was what Naruto needed to puzzle out. Sarutobi folded his hands in front of him as he answered. There are more chakra entities out there than the Kyuubi, Naruto-kun. The 9 most well-known are called the Biju. The Shodem Hokage used his Mokuton, wood-style, Kekkei Genkei to subdue and capture every one of them, bar the 9 tails, and established a sort of power balance between the fledgling villages by gifting the Biju to them. The Biju have tails ranging from 1 tail through to 9 and each take on a different animal appearance. They are the 1-tailed tanuki, the 2-tailed monster cat, the 3-tailed giant tortoise, the 4-tailed giant ape, the 5-tailed dolphin horse, the 6-tailed slug, the 7-tailed giant beetle, the 8-tailed giant ox, and of course, the 9-tailed fox. Are they all as powerful as everyone says the fox is? Naruto asked. Generally, the Biju are rated based on the number of tails they possess. The larger the number of tails, the stronger the beast. Still, it would be like comparing a 10-ton elephant to an 11-ton elephant. Both are still capable of squishing a man like a bug. More than that, each possess their own unique abilities that makes fighting them on their own grounds suicidal for anyone, even cage-level shinobi. Here is an answered. The 1-tail, for example, has long held the ability to fuse its chakra body with sand and resided in caves on Kuni's vast desert before Shodem-sama captured it. In that desolate expanse of sand, the 1-tail is far more powerful than it would be elsewhere, and proved a serious obstacle for Shodem-sama to capture. I was still just a child at the time to witness the battle. I knew then, just as I know now, that had it been anyone else, even the Nidaime, they would not have emerged victorious against the 1-tail. The sheer awe in the old man's voice when he spoke of that battle made Naruto gulp. He couldn't begin to comprehend the scale of the battle his Jiji had witnessed. After everything that the Sandaime had seen and done in his life, for him to still consider that battle one of the greatest he had ever seen was amazing. After pausing for a moment to let what he had said so far sink in, the Hokage continued in a somber voice. Using Fuinjutsu, it is possible to seal one of the Biju inside of a person, allowing them to draw upon the chakra of the sealed beast. A human to whom this had been done to is known as a Jinchuriki, literally meaning, the power of human sacrifice, in an old tongue. That, Naruto-kun, is what you are. The Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. As it is impossible to slay a Biju permanently, sealing it away was the only choice left to the Yondaime. Naruto swallowed as he tried to sort through everything he'd just learned. After a moment, he had to ask another question. But, why me? Why seal it into me? Sarutobi's eyes softened. Not just anyone can become a Jinchuriki, Naruto-kun. It is very, very difficult to find someone to seal a tailed beast into. I do not know if you are aware of this, but you are one of the last living members of the Uzumaki clan. All members of your clan possess a unique physiology that makes you near-perfect hosts for a Biju's powerful chakra. Aside from that, the reason you in particular were chosen is rather simple. Normally sealing one of the Biju takes a great deal of time, preparation, and an immense amount of chakra. The Yondaime had very little of all three by the time he was able to start the sealing process. While the kinjutsu the Yondaime used took care of most of the time restraints and some of the chakra, at the cost of his own life, there was still much more that was needed. The main reason for the extensive preparation and chakra cost is to reinforce the chakra coils of the prospective host. Otherwise the biju's potent chakra would shatter them, killing the host before the process is finished and merely dispersing the beast's chakra. The chakra coils of a newborn baby, however, are undeveloped and thus far more malleable. As you were the only newborn in the village, you were the only possible candidate. The only one the Yondaime could trust to seal the fox in and save the village. Those were some very good reasons. What about my parents? Naruto asked, hoping to find something about them. They both fell to the attacks of the Kyuubi. Sarutobi said gently. But I know that they believed in you just as much as the Yondaime did, Naruto-kun. Just as much as I believe in you. Gigi, Naruto fought back the tears. Is this why everyone's so mean to me? Because of the fox? The old Hokage slumped tiredly back into his seat. The Yondaime's last wish was that you would be known as a hero, Naruto-kun. That by having the fox sealed within you, you were acting as the shield of this village day by day. Unfortunately, the Yondaime believed in the villagers. Too much so, I am sad to say. All of the deaths, all of the destruction, you were seized upon as a scapegoat, Naruto-kun. Some believed you to be merely the reincarnation of the fox itself. He scoffed. Idiocy. Others thought it had possessed you, which is equally ridiculous. Why? When constructing a seal to contain a biju within a human, one of the first things done if you aren't stupid is to create a barrier between the souls and minds of the biju and Jinchuriki, to prevent any kind of contamination or possession from happening. The Sandaime explained. Jiraiya of the Sannin and I have checked your seal very thoroughly, and not only is it locked tight, the mental safeguards are well beyond what you would expect for even a Jinchuriki's seal. It would be more likely for you to spontaneously develop a Kekkei Genkai than for the fox to possess you. This made Naruto's sweat drop for a moment as you could, if you tilted your head and squinted somewhat, call the gamer a bloodline ability of sorts, although he had no clue if it was hereditary or not. Anyway, as the villagers and other factors were becoming ardent regarding you, I made an S-class law, forbidding anyone from telling anyone about your status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki who did not already know. Sarutobi sighed. I had hoped that by doing so, you could grow up as normally as possible. Sadly, it seems that the villagers merely made their children inherit their dislike of you, and the adults harass you. For not knowing of this for all this time, I can only apologize profoundly, Naruto-kun. With that, the Hokage bowed his head in remorse towards Naruto, who could only stare in wide-eyed shock. Gigi, you tried. Naruto said once he managed to recover his equilibrium. It isn't your fault that the villagers violated Yondaime-sama's wishes. It's their fault. So please stop bowing, it's weird to see you do that. Chuckling at that, Sarutobi straightened up. Thank you for your understanding. Still, I am sorry for what you have endured until now. It isn't warranted, nor is it fair. I give you my word that any further interference from the civilian villagers will be curtailed severely, if not outright suppressed. The steely look of determination in the old shinobi's eyes made Naruto actually feel a little sorry for any civilian who was stupid enough to come at him. So, what does being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi do for me? Naruto asked after a moment. As it has been dwelling within you almost since you were born, your chakra coils are vastly larger than normal. I'd estimate that by now the chakra reserves you can access now are low Jonin level at the very least. Sarutobi said with a nod at the boy's question. Reserves I can access? Naruto tilted his head to one side in confusion. Yes. Humans have a lot of chakra, even those without active coils. The professor explained. What we refer to as a person's chakra pool is the amount of chakra, that is the combination of mental and physical energy, which someone can safely draw upon without causing harm to themselves. That is the reserves I was speaking of earlier. If you really push yourself, you can access more chakra, but it would be drawn from the mental and physical energy that sustains your body, which would cause you harm. Severe cases of this are referred to as negative chakra, and almost always result in the person in question retiring as an active shinobi. In your case, however, you likely have so much chakra that you don't have to worry about that unless you were to use multiple S-rank jutsu in quick succession. However, possessing too much chakra without the ability to manipulate it fully is just as dangerous. The sheer amount of chakra within your body could have detrimental effects if you attempt to manipulate it all at once. So your mind and body instinctively places a limit on what you can and cannot use. With practice and work on your chakra control, that limit will slowly but surely rise until you can use all of the chakra that you have without any worries of burning yourself out. Wow, that actually made sense. His chakra points represented the chakra he could safely access without burning himself out, and they rose because he had a greater control over chakra and ability to withstand the pressure of the chakra. Once you have some seasoning as a genin, I'll have Jiraiya-kun come and have another look at your seal and perhaps teach you a method of harnessing the chakra of the Kyuubi. Sarutobi continued. Aside from myself, Jiraiya-kun has the most knowledge about the seal holding the Kyuubi, and he has the additional advantage of being in Fuinjutsu Grand Master, whereas I am a mere intermediate master. I'm gonna be trained by a Sannin? Naruto's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. Even he'd heard of the grade 3 ninja, the Sandai Mazold you pass the graduation exam, yes. The old man had to chuckle at the childlike awe that the boy showed at that revelation. Now, just to give you advance warning, no one is permitted to inform others of your status as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi with 3 exceptions. Me, as the one who wrote the law, the sitting Hokage, which just so happens to be me at the moment, and the person whom the law is about, you, in other words, Naruto-kun. I will caution you to be careful who you tell, as it should not be bandied around carelessly. If other villages discovered your identity, they would attempt to kidnap you and extract the Kyuubi to use for their own ends, which would kill you. The orphan gulped. Understood, Gigi. The Hokage nodded approvingly. Now that the Kyuubi business is done, there is something I was hoping to ask you about Naruto-kun. A member of Anbu spotted you using some strange ability to absorb a scroll while in town. Can I ask what it is that you did? Naruto froze. Hell, he had not expected Anbu to be lurking around. Although, now that he knew of his status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, it made sense for him to be shadowed outside of his apartment or the academy, especially since the Spandex Brigade incident. The familiar sight of the world going gray and a box popping up in front of him was almost welcome. Critical choice. At this time, you are left with 2 options. Either attempt to bluff the Hokage or come clean about the gamer with him. Your chances of bluffing him are almost non-existent. Be warned that your choice here will affect your relationship with the Hokage. Choice 1. Well, Gigi, since you were honest with me. Choice 2. What are you talking about, Gigi? This, Naruto could tell, was an absolutely critical moment for him, as the headline of the box stated. He did not want to damage his relationship with his Gigi, but at the same time, he was leery of revealing his big secret. The blonde boy froze again. Then again, his Gigi had just revealed a big secret of the village to him when he could have simply bluffed it out or put him off until graduation in a couple of months. He had trusted Naruto, so the only right thing to do was to trust him in return. Slowly, Naruto reached out and pressed the first option, restarting time as he looked into his surrogate grandfather's eyes. Well, Gigi, since you were honest with me, I should be honest with you, Datbeo, he said with a nervous swallow. I woke up a couple of months ago to see something floating above my head. He then went on to give a brief explanation of his gamer power, what he could do with it, how it affected things around him and so on. As he went on, he saw that the Hokage was becoming more and more skeptical, so he pulled a scroll out of his inventory as proof. This made Sarutobi examine his arm and clothes for any kind of seal, and he was baffled when he found none. I can't figure it out. There was absolutely no sign of chakra being used there. The old man confessed in mild disbelief. He made a note to look up this Gaia theory in his personal library at some point. He vaguely recalled having heard of it before, but couldn't recall anything other than the name. I wish there was a way to show you everything, Naruto said in frustration. Then he blinked as a screen popped up in front of him. Invite Sarutobi Hiruzen to the party. Why, no, how suspiciously convenient. Hitting the correct button, he watched in amusement as his Gigi started at the side of a box appearing in front of him. He'd been like that in the beginning. Party invitation. Uzumaki Naruto has invited you into his party. Accept? Forming the ram hand sign. Sarutobi attempted a genjutsu dispel using both methods he knew of, but the box remained. With a flip of his wrist, a kunai appeared in the old man's hand and he applied a quick cut to the tip of one of his fingers, not even wincing at the sudden pain, but the box remained. I did the same thing. Naruto confided in him. Either we're both affected by a stupidly powerful genjutsu, or this is for real. Nodding, the Hokage gingerly pressed the Y key and then his jaw dropped as his own status box appeared. He quickly scanned it and looked at Naruto in disbelief. "These are my physical and mental attributes?" he asked for confirmation. "Yup." Naruto did his best to keep his curiosity under control and not take a peek himself. Asking about or peeking at his Gigi's stat page would be like gathering information for an attack on him. If he wanted to show Naruto, then he would look, but not otherwise. "What level does it say you are, Gigi?" "Level 99. Sarutobi replied after a moment, making Naruto gape at him. "I knew you were strong, but," the orphan was amazed at his surrogate grandfather. Here was he at only LV 15. The difference between them was insane. "I also have several special statuses that mostly involve my physical prowess taking something of a hit due to my advanced age." Sarutobi sighed. "They can be mitigated, now that I know what to instruct the med nin to look for and deal with, but sadly one cannot fight age indefinitely." He spent the next few minutes looking over his skills, his perks and his flaws. The wonder in his eyes grew with every clarification he came across that proved Naruto had spoken the truth. "Naruto-kun, this is a strange and wonderful power that you have been given," the old man said at last. "It would also put a target the size of the Hokage mountain on you if anyone found out about it. I can name several organizations who would love nothing more than to somehow gain control of such a unique ability. Never mind the possibility that it might be inheritable by your children. I can lay even odds on people attempting to kidnap you in order to gain the gamer for their village via your progeny." "Yikes," Naruto muttered, blanching at the thought. His class had been given the talk just a few months ago and it had taken him ages to not explode into a full-body blush at the sight of a girl. Getting the gamer had really helped with that. As such, I am declaring this a sulfur monosulfide rank secret, not to be written down and only I can tell others about it," Sarutobi stated. One possibility he did not tell Naruto about was the danger represented by Danzo and his Nei operatives. He could just imagine the old warhawk salivating at the amount of strength that his men could obtain while under the effects of the gamer. No, he was not going to permit that to happen to either his home or his surrogate grandson. "Once you graduate, your Jonin sensei will be informed of the gamer's existence, but no one else aside from in a life or death situation," the Hokage continued sternly. "I say this as the Sandaime Hokage and order it thus. Am I understood, Naruto-kun?" "Hi, Hokage-sama." Naruto responded automatically. This was the first time his Gigi had ordered him as the military dictator of the village and boy, was the old man intimidating. "You have been affected by Sarutobi Hiruzen's aura of command skill." The two blinked at the pop-up and shook their heads at the range and depth that the gamer seemed to deal in. Naruto checked the skill and discovered it was a skill unlocked when Sarutobi had reached a leadership stat of 50. It made the user's subordinates more likely to follow orders, and faster, as well as being able to enforce obedience on neutral, allied or friendly characters within line of sight with LD of less than the bearer's own. "Broken as hell," Naruto muttered. "Just so," Sarutobi said bemusedly in agreement. After a moment, the blonde boy looked at the Hokage. "Gigi, I can see that having a biju is kind like a weapon. Do the ninjas see me like that?" Swiftly shifting mental gears at the change in subject, Sarutobi sighed. "The divide in the ninja forces is pronounced. The civilian-born members generally dislike you due to how they perceive you as the Kyuubi, although there are exceptions. The ninja clansmen and clanswomen that join the ninja forces have a better understanding of F-ori of Jinchuriki in their clan's own library, so they are at least neutral to you. The increased knowledge of the basic rules of Fuinjutsu is where most of that understanding comes from, as only old and powerful clans, such as the Hyuga, have any records of Jinchuriki outside of the official Konoha records. Why? I would have thought that it was pretty much an open secret since Shodem-sama handed the biju out like party favors," Naruto pointed out. Suppressing a snort of amusement at the comparison, the The Sandaime shook his head. All clans have their specialties, Naruto-kun. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, out of all of them, a specialty in fuinjutsu is rarer than you might think. And most clans rarely extend interest to subjects outside of those specialties. More than that, the policy for the sitting Hokage over the past 100 years since the founding has been to encourage such a disinterest in Jinchuriki. Why, I am not at liberty to say. Naruto filed this under things that are suspicious in his mind. For making a correct deduction, you gain +1 whis. Does this happen all the time? Sarutobi asked. More often than I'd like. Naruto grumbled. I could swear that it's mocking me sometimes. He glared at the place in front of him that boxes usually popped up in, almost daring the gamer to comment on that. It evidently chose not to. Did immaterial entities even have survival instincts, he wondered. Anyway, you have a few months left until graduation. Sarutobi continued. Do you know how strong you'll be at that point? Level-wise, I'm hoping to reach level 17, Naruto stated. I can't reach any higher than that because of a level cap, as the gamer calls it. I have to class up from academy student to genin before I can raise my level higher. If or when I reach level 17, I'll probably focus on improving my stats and leveling up my jutsu as much as I can. What can you tell me about jutsu levels? The Hokage asked interestedly. Only what I've observed with my own jutsu. Naruto admitted with a slight shrug. Apparently jutsu, actually all skills in general, seem to have this level cap thing. A point past which they cannot become stronger. The self-made bow, tanto and kodachi styles that I made reached it at level 10. I'd call them about F rank, the kind that even a chakra-active civilian could use. I see, most of my E-rank jutsu, except for multiple application jutsu such as the Academy 3, stopped at level 25 to 30, with D-rank jutsu stopping at 40, C ranks at 50, B ranks at 75, A ranks at 80, and some of my S-rank jutsu still haven't been maxed out and they're over 100. The old Hokage reported as he scanned his own skill sheet again. I also have a lot of these skills that aren't really jutsu, such as that aura of command ability from a moment ago. A lot of them are chakra control skills and the like. Okay, really jealous. Naruto scowled. I only just got basic chakra control a while back, and that was after doing the tree climbing exercise a whole bunch. I'll look over some of the exercises that I've acquired over the years, particularly for those that match your elemental affinities. Sarutobi promised. For your graduation present. You're a futon, Doden primary, secondary, correct? Yup. I'm aiming to get Kaden as a tertiary affinity as well if I can swing it. Asuma-sensei's showed me a couple of kick-ass jutsu that got me really excited about it. Naruto declared with a gleeful expression on his face. This made the old Hokage laugh. Gaining a tertiary chakra nature is a basic requirement for full Jonin rank. Naruto-kun. He chuckled. I admire your tenacity and ambition, but I would recommend only dabbling in Kaden jutsu for now. Focus on solidifying and mastering your natural chakra natures first. It will lead to acquiring your third affinity much faster than otherwise. Got it. The boy nodded determinedly. Well then, I think we've gone over everything. The Sandaime said with a sigh. Once again, do not mention your gamer powers to anybody and be very careful to whom you mention your status as a Jinchuriki, as well as those around them. It is your choice to whom you tell that particular secret to so long as they are from Konoha. But I would advise that, for now, keeping your secret a secret is the best plan. Gotcha. Naruto nodded seriously. After discussing Mizuki's latest sabotage attempt, which Sarutobi was not happy about, the two parted, with the old Hokage sighing for what felt like the umpteenth time that day. Whatever this gamer power is, Naruto-kun will use it wisely as a shinobi. Sarutobi thought as he tapped a finger on the desk, his eyes absently darting across his reopened status screen, searching for some form of clue. What concerns me more is the origin of this strange power. It is unlike any form of Kekkei Genkei I have ever heard of, and the fact that it does not seem fueled by chakra is terrifying in its own way. More so, such a power does not simply crop up every day, nor do I for one moment believe that Naruto's selection as the gamer is in any way random. Being the gamer is one thing. being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is another, but to be both at once. He could not help a shudder run across his body. Once Naruto could expand the scopes of his power more freely, Sarutobi had the feeling that the orphaned son of the Yondaime and the red-hot habanero would truly surpass those who came before him. Speaking of which, ending the lockdown on his office, the old Hokage snapped his fingers, causing an Anbu member with a dog mask to appear kneeling before his desk. Inform the surveillance teams that they are to step up the level of scrutiny Toji Mizuki is under from level 3 to level 2. He ordered coldly. Level 3 scrutiny from an Anbu team was basic observation of the subject's daily routine, as well as casual background checks of his friends and acquaintances. Level 2 was more invasive and less polite, involving the infiltration of his home and all of his scrolls, secret stashes and the like being searched, as well as thorough background checks on not only his friends and casual acquaintances, but his colleagues, family and even his general neighborhood. If Mizuki proved to be any more suspicious, Sarutobi would escalate things to level 0, bypassing level 1 altogether, and have the man interrogated by Mitarashi Anko and Morino Ibiki. He was already guilty of weakening the strength of the village Jinchuriki, a class of crime in itself. Hatred could make men do reckless, stupid things, but it could also make them become weak-minded as well, leading them to choose options they would not have before they were infected by pervasive hatred. "Hi, Hokage-sama." Dog replied and vanished in a puff of chakra smoke. "You had better hope that my Anbu do not find anything amiss with you beneath the surface, Mizuki," the Sandaime muttered before returning to his paperwork. The Chunin had already been on thin ice for what Iruka-kun had reported back when Naruto had just gained the gamer, but now, one more misstep and the old Hokage would simply make the man disappear? In any terms of value, Naruto's safety and proper development was now worth far more than a single Chunin. With Naruto, quest complete. Grab the fox by its tails. You have successfully confronted your surrogate grandfather and had the truth, or a large part of it at least, revealed to you. Quest rewards. Plus 2500 XP. Plus 500 Ryo. Special status changed to Kyuubi Jinchuriki, discovered perk Perfect Jinchuriki Host. Reputation with Sarutobi Hiruzen, maxed out. Hidden quest. Complete. You willingly revealed your status as the gamer to your village leader with only the gentlest of prodding. Hidden quest rewards. Bakuhatsu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Scroll, Greater Fujin Haori. You have successfully maxed out your reputation with a character for the first time. You gain plus 5000 XP. Wow. Was all the boy could say to that. The Express and Ryo were nice, but the rest was the real treat. The perk, Perfect Jinchuriki Host, basically Saint Gigi had told him that he could have any of the Biju sealed within him without any negative effects. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki special status was the one that added to his chakras so much with every level, and his heart swelled with pride as he saw that he and his Gigi had the maximum possible relationship. The 2 extra rewards for the hidden quest certainly sounded kick-ass too. Another part of the Greater Fujin set was useful, and the Explosive Shadow Clone Jutsu would be a good addition to his rapidly growing arsenal of techniques. He'd have to experiment with the jutsu to see exactly how good it was. As the boy set off to his apartment, he had a jaunty step to his walk. Things had gone far better than he would have thought today, and he couldn't be happier. "You have moved more than half a mile from your party members. Do you wish to disband the party?" "Why, will he remember everything I told and showed him?" Naruto wondered. Yes. The boy twitched in surprise as his gamer ability actually answered his muttered question. That was weird. Just about as weird as it telling him about the Kyuubi in what had to be the most irrelevant written tone that he had ever read. Shaking off the suspicion that something was going on with the gamer, Naruto hit the Y button and dissolved the party. He'd figure out what was up with his power later. For now, he had important business to do. Lunch at Ichiraku's. Later underground base, Konoha Danzo, sitting behind a desk, listening as his agent reported what little he knew about the meeting that had occurred between the weapon and the old monkey. The defeat of his agents a few weeks ago, with one actually dying at the hands of the weapon, was a mixed bag of news for the old warhawk. On one hand, the weapon was now blooded and would find taking a life far easier from here on out. On the other hand though, He was fairly certain that Sarutobi had guessed that he was behind the attack. Plus, losing an agent, even if it wasn't one of his elite operatives, in what should have been a milk run, was not making him any happier. Ni's rosters were small enough already without losing agents on easy missions. The fact that the old fool would likely now be working to further undermine his organization would make replacing his losses and gathering new, raw materials even more difficult than it had been before. The meeting that had taken place earlier that day between the two people who had irked the Yami no Shinobi for the past 12 years was unusual. Oh, the two met with an irritating frequency, so the meeting in and of itself wasn't unusual, but the fact that Sarutobi had judged whatever it was they were going to talk about to be serious enough to activate Toburama-sensei's secrecy and privacy seals was worthy of note. Even he couldn't bypass those seals without Sarutobi realizing he had done so. He made several attempts at finding a bypass and had some partial successes early on, but when both that fool Jiraiya and the soft-hearted brat Namikaze had gotten involved in updating them, his attempts had become utterly ineffective. Danzo may have loathed Jiraiya for a foolish wastrel and the Yondaime for his pacifistic tendencies, but not even he could deny their skills with art of Fuinjutsu far surpassed his own. "Return to your post," the crippled man instructed the agent once he finished his report. "Attempt to discover any paperwork that might give a hint as to the subject of their conversation." "Hi, Danzo-sama." The man vanished as he spoke. Danzo leaned back in his seat and pondered the situation. He daren't risk riling up his old rival now that his most overt card had been played, at least not until the weapon became a genin and went out on a C-rank mission. At that point, he could have him tested by hired Nuke Nin, using actual Nuke Nin this time, to see if the death of his agent had been a sign of the weapon's strength or the influence of the Higurashi girl. She had been an unforeseen wrench in his plans, he had to admit. Monitoring a fairly new genin and her normal family, blacksmithing expertise and former shinobi status aside, was not something he would have thought he would have to do. Evidently he should have kept a closer eye on them, as her presence had thrown his agents off enough to not stick to their script. The reports of her hurling what amounted to an entire armory's worth of weaponry as a result of what one had said had taken him a moment to believe. It was at times like this that the Warhawk could see why Sarutobi disliked his Nei agents. They had all the imagination and creativity of a concussed lemming outside of combat. Not to mention being unable to sense the conversational landmine inherent in threatening to rape and kidnap a kunoichi, apparently. Still, they were far more useful in combat than other shinobi, in his opinion at least, and they could never become Nuke Nin. Power and loyalty were the two main attributes that he cared for in shinobi. Too much of the former without enough of the latter was a recipe for disaster. The matter of the weapon decided for the moment, Danzo decided to head home for the day. He had a nice warm bath awaiting him there to soothe the aches of his battered and aged body. Age, he mused, was a royal pain. Chapter 18. Graduation several months later. Academy classroom, Konohagakure no Sato. Name: Uzumaki Naruto class. The gamer level: 17, next level. 00.00%, level cap. Class up for further level progression. Title: Academy student, plus 25% expressed to LV10, age, 12. HP: 2000 CP. 2200 STR. 43 STA. 46, plus 10. Dex: 40 INT. 41, plus 5, WIS. 37 LUK. Uzumaki Naruto was practically trembling in nervous anticipation as he waited for the start of the practical portion of the final exams, his eyes constantly darting towards his open status window. The last few months had been both immensely gratifying and supremely irritating. Gratifying in that he had trained himself as hard as he could and had shown real and noticeable progress with everything he'd worked on. Irritating in that the damned level cap had forced him to limit his training to just honing and improving the skills he'd acquired as well as those few he gained while simply working toward his goal. Thanks to Iruka, he had learned the traveling 10 and had managed to max all 10 out within 2 months. Mostly due to the fact that each had a level cap of only 20, which was apparently the usual for E-rank jutsu. A pleasant surprise was that mastering the futon and doden jutsu had leveled up his natural futon affinity and secondary doden skills by 1. Also, it seemed maxing out low-ranking jutsu like that generates a brand new jutsu on the next level up. Doden. Anna had given him the D rank, Doden. Atoshiana, Earth Style. Pitfall. A jutsu that was basically a larger variant of the original that was big enough to trap a fully grown man, if only barely. Doden. Umaru had given him, Doden. Doshikuger, Earth Style. Mudslide. A jutsu that sent a wave of mud at his enemy, while Doden. Wana gave him another version of Atoshiana, called Doden. Kushizashi no Atoshiana, Earth Style. Skewer Pitfall. That was only slightly higher on the scale than the original, being a high D-rank jutsu, as it was simply adding small, earthen spikes to the bottom of the pit. Futon. Soyokazi gave him Futon. Yakazi, Wind Style. Arrow Wind. A weak offensive attack that formed arrows from the air around him and sent them flying at the enemy. Futon. Shosha gave him another non-combat jutsu, Futon. Suzukazi, Wind Style. Cool Breeze. It circulated the air and lowered its temperature slightly to alleviate heat. Naruto supposed that it would be useful if he had to go to Kei's no Kuni or a similar location for a mission. Sweden. Ketsuro gave him Sweden. Yudachi, Water Style. Evening Squall. Another fairly weak attack jutsu that formed multiple small darts of water from the air around him and fired them at the enemy. Sweden. Roki gave him Sweden. Suisho, Water Style. Water Crystal. A personal defense jutsu. It created a shield of water about the size of a dinner plate that he could control to intercept attacks. The two fire types of the Traveling Ten, Kaden, Kisu, and Kaden. Hibana simply gave a level each to Kaden. Hotarubi, which was fine. As he was taking his Gigi's advice, it was fine. He could earn a third elemental affinity later on. Finally, Raiden. Saidenki had given him Raiden. Denko Sekka, Lightning Style. Lightning Snowflakes, an odd jutsu that, as its name suggested, fired a dozen or so snowflakes of lightning at the enemy, each dealing only a tiny amount of damage but also having a small chance to cause temporary paralysis as a result of muscle spasms. He had been forced to show Iruka-sensei the doctored scroll that Mizuki had given him in order to get a proper scroll, and boy, had Iruka-sensei been pissed at Mizuki. He had gone off to report the man with almost indecent haste and had come back looking, if not satisfied, then mollified by whatever his Gigi had said. His study dates with Sakura had continued, although he hadn't gained any int from the sessions within a bit over a month after learning about the Kyuubi. On the bright side, he was now halfway up the ladder of neutral to friendly, relationship-wise, not as far as he'd like, but he'd take it. Naruto had also tried to be nice to Hinata, emphasis on tried, because the girl fainted if he was too nice to her. Seriously, the first time he called her Hinata-chan to her face, she turned crimson, squeaked and fainted. How the hell were you supposed to talk to someone who did that? At a guess, it was her Shy Maiden title that she had, her second title at that. He had scanned people with observe and found that a lot of people, especially members of the shinobi forces, had a second title. That he hadn't been able to see them until only a month or so ago, which was likely because the observe skills level had been too low. The civilians either hadn't classed up to earn a second title, like Tenten's parents, or weren't a member of an important clan, like Hinata was. It made Naruto wonder what high-ranking people, like his Gigi, had title-wise. All he got when he casually observed him was a screen full of question marks and only a single title. As the Uzumaki boy doubted that his Gigi was in any way inferior to Hyuga Hinata, he had to guess that the Hokage had at least the same number of titles that she did, perhaps even a third or more. There's so much about my power that the help section either doesn't mention or skates over. He thought with a frown. It's like the stupid thing wants me to learn things as I go rather than having all knowledge straight off the bat. Down at the front of the classroom, the two Chunin, Iruka and Mizuki, were marking papers, which made Naruto grin somewhat. Thanks to his increased int and whiz, all thanks to Sakura, he could have passed the test with full marks, but he chose not to. His scores over the past year had steadily risen to be just above average, and it would be odd for someone who'd been dead last at the start of the year to get a perfect score out of nowhere. Plus, he He wanted anyone that got their hands on his files to underestimate him. So, he had made enough deliberate errors to earn a passing grade just a bit above the normal curve, but not spectacularly so. He hadn't gotten any of the questions regarding the Hokage wrong though. Such blasphemy was beyond his ability to accomplish. As the man who would surpass all the previous Kage, he had to have a thorough knowledge of all his predecessors in order to fully and completely surpass them. "Okay class." Iruka called as he stood up. "It's time for your taijutsu and shurikenjutsu tests. Follow Mizuki and me outside so we can conduct them." Those two tests were only worth 10 points or so each to your overall grade, so most had just half-assed it the previous 2 times Naruto had taken the exam, at least with the latter test. Taijutsu was a vital survival skill for a shinobi, however, so no one in their right mind had ever skimped on it, save a few who claimed they were going to be jutsu experts. Tenten had drilled him on his throwing technique though, so Naruto had no desire to draw her wrath by getting any less than full marks for the shurikenjutsu test. The couple of times that he had seen her really angry since he had befriended the aspiring weapons mistress made the young blonde very eager to avoid having that rage turned on him for any reason. Out of all of his classmates, the only person to get a perfect score of 10 out of 10 in vital locations on the target during the shurikenjutsu test was Sasuke, with Hinata and, surprisingly, Shikamaru coming in second with 9. Shino, Kiba, Ino and Sakura got a respectable 8 out of 10. Kiba and Choji scored 7 and 6 respectively. So when, with practiced ease just short of Sasuke's own, Naruto also scored a perfect 10 out of 10, there was loud muttering from the class. Sasuke looked shocked for a moment before smirking and letting out an ambivalent grunt. Iruka also looked impressed. "You have gained plus 200 reputation with Uchiha Sasuke. You have gained plus 200 reputation with Amino Iruka." Stifling a pleased expression, Naruto moved away to let the rest of the civilian genin aspirants HG. He had reached honored status with Iruka a while back, which had led to the Chunin giving him supplementary lessons once Asuma-sensei had to stop because he went back on active duty. His shurikenjutsu and other general ninja skills had all risen by quite a large amount thanks to that. When the taijutsu portion came up, Naruto was really tempted to lay into Mizuki, who was in charge of this portion of the exam, with his advanced Hokage taijutsu, but forced himself not to act out. Long-term pranking beat short-term satisfaction, he reminded himself sternly. As much as it pained him to admit it, the blonde orphan had still never beaten Sasuke in a taijutsu match, although the number of times that they faced one another had dropped sharply, only happening once or twice a month rather than occurring nearly every other time they had spars. He supposed that Iruka-sensei and his Jiji had cracked down on Mizuki enough that the blue-haired man couldn't dare interfere too much, at least, not beyond the increasingly frequent unsubtle looks of hatred the man sent him when Iruka wasn't looking and most of his classmates were distracted. The man was going to do something stupid, Naruto could tell. For making an accurate prediction based on prior experience and logic, you are awarded +2 whiz. An irked vein on his forehead pulsed slightly before Naruto calmed down. His power had become very snarky and sarcastic recently, sending verbal, written, jabs at him whenever he gained stats and generally being a bit of a pain in the ass. Mentally shrugging, the Uzumaki boy focused his attention onto the confirmation that Mizuki was indeed going to do something stupid, probably to do with him. He'd have to make preparations. Fighting Mizuki in a taijutsu spar was challenging. Thanks to altering his diet to include food other than ramen and the increased amount of exercise, Naruto was a good 3 inches taller than he had been when he received his gamer abilities, and he was fairly muscled as well, but Mizuki, unfortunately, had both reach and experience on him, as well as the fact that he knew the standard Hokage taijutsu style inside and out and could thus predict with reasonable certainty exactly what Naruto was going to do even as he did it. Still, with Iruka watching, the blue-haired man had to act like a teacher and thus curtail his actions to the same level as he had with the other spars. With those limits holding him back, the man wasn't prepared for the punch to the gut that Naruto opened up with, or for the attempted knee to the face that was the follow-up. He was still a Chunin though, so he was able to dodge the second attack, albeit by a thinner margin than he would have preferred. Grimacing as his attack failed, Naruto quickly retreated to await Mizuki's inevitable counterattack. It came swiftly, a low kick designed to break his stance and leave him open to punches while he was distracted. The blonde boy leapt into the air, vaulting over Mizuki's leg, which was moving at mid-genin level speed, and kicked the man in the face. The look of utter shock on the Chunin's face was priceless. Naruto followed up with a chop to the side of the neck before kicking off of Mizuki and retreating again. The blue-haired Chunin was both amazed and furious that Naruto was fighting so well. He was definitely at least mid-genin level, perhaps a hair stronger, which was truly amazing considering he had barely been worthy of being called a street brawler 10 months ago. The damn demon Brad must be drawing on that power. The man thought bitterly. It stopped using the flawed taijutsu style I taught it and is using the advanced level of the Hokage style. No ordinary person could learn a style so quickly without the Sharingan or something similar, and it's no Uchiha. He must be using its powers somehow. Several people across the village sneezed for no reason, all of them very good taijutsu practitioners who learned quicker than Naruto. They felt annoyed for some reason too. Very impressive. Even if Mizuki's lowering his abilities to mid-genin at the moment, he's still got a longer reach than Naruto, and he's far more experienced. Yet Naruto's still holding him off easily. Iruka thought with a smile, very proud of the boy. I'll have to treat him to Ichiraku's after class today as a reward for his hard work. You pass, Naruto-kun, Mizuki said, hiding his reluctance behind a practiced smile. Yada dat bayo, the orphan yelled and fist pumped gleefully. Warning, your relationship with Toji Mizuki cannot go any lower. Naruto rolled his eyes as he walked away, closing the screen with a twitch of a finger. As if he cared about what Mizuki thought of him. If the man wanted to cause trouble with him, the blonde boy would fight back. It was as simple as that. Naruto-kun, Hinata blushed and poked her fingers together, so cool. Sakura was surprised that Naruto had done so well against Mizuki-sensei. The Pinkette had sparred against him on a more frequent basis since her victory against Ino and never won a single time, but this was different. Even Sasuke-kun had been forced to push himself against a Chunin-level opponent, but Naruto wasn't even breathing hard. Geez, Iruka-sensei was right. He is a stamina nut, the Pinkette thought with a shake of her head. The last Uchiha smirked at his rival's victory. That was very precise taijutsu that Naruto had just used. A very good use of the standard Hokage kata. With a few things thrown in that were obviously Naruto's own twist on the style. No matter how good it was no match for the Uchiha's Sekendo, intercepting fist, style. Get a new style, Dobi. I want a strong rival to try my hand against. The young Uchiha smirked as the taijutsu sparring came to an end and the class trooped back to the classroom for the last section of the Genin exam, the ninjutsu portion. With the Hokage and the Jonin, he's gotten better at taijutsu since I last sparred with him. Asuma mentioned to his father. The former member of the 12 Guardian Shinobi had his hands in his pockets as he observed the crystal ball that the Hokage was using his Tomagain no Jutsu on. He has indeed. Sarutobi smirked at his son. Naruto-kun has come a long way in such a short period of time. Minato, Kushina, you would be so proud of him, he thought sadly. Most of the rest aren't exactly standing out, aside from the clan kids. A silver-haired man with his Hite 8 pulled down over one eye said disinterestedly. That pink-haired girl did well on the written portion, she got full marks according to this. A black-haired woman wearing what looked like a bundle of temple sutras observed, waving a page. Haruno Sakura. Currently this year's top kunoichi. The Hokage informed her. Her intelligence is very impressive, and her skill with genjutsu is strong, but her other scores are about average. She has been training with Naruto-kun recently and has improved her physical condition. She has quite a lot of potential as either a genjutsu mistress or as a med nin. Yuhi Kurenai raised an eyebrow, slightly impressed. As the acknowledged genjutsu mistress of Konoha, she was more aware than anyone of how hard to attain such skills were. The exacting chakra control needed to craft illusions of the highest caliber was something most ninja and kunoichi were incapable of, aside from the Uchiha, who merely had to look once at any sort of technique and copy it with their Sharingan. With the only Uchiha loyal to the leaf more inclined to ninjutsu than genjutsu, she doubted her position as the preeminent genjutsu expert was in any danger. Med Nin had just as exacting chakra requirements as a genjutsu mistress did. Except they were also required to have in-depth knowledge of not only the human anatomy at a level that surpassed most assassination specialists, but also a deep amount of focus, as a single fluctuation of chakra at an inopportune moment could spell disaster for their patients. "So who's getting who?" Asuma asked curiously. "You've been playing things pretty close to your vest lately. The Anbu have been investigating the academy recently." Sarutobi sighed. "Unbeknownst to me, standards have slipped. The academy is not as good now as it was even 5 years ago. Through no fault of their own. I fear this crop will need additional training before they are up to standard." The muttering of the Jonin went up a notch. "Such as?" Hitaki Kakashi asked, his one visible eye sharpening as he regarded the soon-to-be genin. To grab a random example, out of all of them, only Uzumaki Naruto has been blooded against chakra mutations, since the academy cancelled the final year trip to a semi-saturated training ground, out of concern for their innocence. Or some such drivel. The Hokage stated lowly, his tone radiating disapproval and more than a bit of frustration. Naruto-kun has been clearing Training Ground 13 for the past few months and is in the process of clearing the third sub-area. If what I've heard about that particular training ground is true, then it's an impressive accomplishment, the silver-haired Jonin said with a nod before turning from the globe to give the Hokage a curious look. "So what genius is going to be having a nice talk with Ibiki and Enko-chan about sabotaging our precious little recruits?" Several members of the Merchant Council and the headmaster of the academy, Sarutobi said with a bite of sharp satisfaction in his voice. Another area which is in need of addressing is shinobi tactics and strategy. Just about the only ones in this class who understand what a shinobi is supposed to act like are the Nara and Aburame heirs. So, this is what I am proposing. Back with Iruka, Haruno Sakura. The scarred Chunin called out. He was looking forward to this, as Naruto had hinted over the past month that Sakura had some kind of secret weapon tucked up her non-existent sleeve for this exam. Iruka had to admit that his curiosity was somewhat piqued. "Hi, sensei," the pinkette said as she came down from her seat to stand in front of him and Mizuki. "Mizuki, what has happened to you?" Iruka thought mournfully, casting a sad glance to where his old friend was sitting next to him. Even when they were still academy students, Mizuki had always been sarcastic and had a bit of a dark streak, but since the start of the year Iruka had started to notice all sorts of incongruities about him and the way he acted, especially in regards to Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, the one who was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. That was where it all came down to. Iruka had lost his parents to the beast, and much to his current shame. He had indeed hated Naruto when he had entered the academy. But over the years, the ball of energy that was Naruto had worn down and dispersed that hatred. The boy wore his heart on his sleeve, and Iruka was an experienced enough Chunin to have a reasonably good enough ability to read people to see that the boy was about as much the Kyuubi as a Satsuma was at being an apple. This made Mizuki's constant sabotaging of Naruto's skills worse in Iruka's eyes, as he could see in Mizuki's actions what he would have become had he not forced himself to be a consummate professional when at the academy and given the boy a chance to prove himself rather than letting his hatred blind him. "Okay, Sakura-chan. Please use the Kawarimi no Jutsu on that stump over there." He nodded at the wooden block of wood that Mizuki had pulled out of a cupboard when they had returned to the classroom. Nodding, Sakura ran through the 5 hand signs of the technique: tiger, boar, ox, dog and snake. Kawarimi no Jutsu. In a small puff of smoke in both locations, Sakura and the block of wood had exchanged places. Iruka noted that the amount of chakra smoke was very small, indicating a high mastery of the technique, as well as almost no chakra wasted. "Very good. Now swap positions again, please," he said with a nod. With another few moments, Sakura and the wooden block were back in their original positions. Iruka marked her down as receiving full points for that jutsu. "Now, I want you to use the Henge no Jutsu. Transform into Mizuki." The scarred Chunin directed her. For a civilian-born student, even one with such excellent chakra control as Sakura had, this was a tricky jutsu as she had to constantly emit chakra in order to maintain it, and she had smallish reserves. Sakura ran through the 3 hand signs: dog, boar and ram. Henge no Jutsu. In another small puff of smoke, Sakura was replaced with Mizuki, who smirked and inclined his head at him in a manner very similar to the real deal. Ruka carefully examined the doppelganger of his friend before nodding. She had gotten everything right. "You can release it now," he stated. With a sigh of relief, Sakura reverted to her real appearance with another small puff of smoke. Ruka once again gave her full marks for the jutsu. Excellent eye for detail, and she'd managed to control her chakra expenditure beautifully. Overall, very impressive. "Okay then. For the last part of this test, you're to perform a Bunshin no Jutsu," he stated. "If you are able to perform a jutsu other than the basic Bunshin in addition to it, you will receive bonus points." This was the compromise that the Hokage had made. Naruto could use a clone type other than the illusory clone, but he would not receive bonus points for it, as the test did specify a Bunshin no Jutsu, not the Bunshin no Jutsu. Anything beyond a single clone type would get bonus points though. Again, Sakura ran through the hand signs: Ram, Snake Tiger. Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 illusory clones of the Pinkette phased into existence around her. At a cursory glance, they were perfect. Looking closer, there were a couple of very minor distortions in the clone's clothing that someone who knew Sakura would notice at once, but it wasn't a critical point. She still earned full marks for the jutsu. "Very good, Sakura-chan. Now, is there another clone jutsu that you'd like to show us?" Ruka asked with a knowing look. "Hi, but I'll need a moment to prepare it," the Pinkette said. From her waist pouch, she pulled a couple of scrolls. Opening them, she laid one atop the other, ran through 3 hand signs and slammed her right palm onto the middle of the scrolls. "Kamoku Kachiyose no Jutsu, item some jutsu." In a small burst of smoke, a large basin full of water appeared before Iruka and Mizuki's shocked eyes. The sum jutsu was mostly for animals, yes, but as Sakura had just demonstrated, items could be summoned as well. Using a pair of scrolls with the sum formulae drawn onto it sharply reduced the chakra cost, as did the simplicity of the item she had bound to the scroll. Iruka could have summoned that basin and the water inside of it over 1,000 times in a row and not been tired, just as an example. For Sakura, this would have wiped out about 1/3 of her reserves. "For future reference, we can prepare things like this for you," Mizuki said once he picked his jaw up off the floor. "Oh, sorry," Sakura said sheepishly. Anyway, she ran through 8 more hand signs. Sweden. Kika no Jutsu. Water style, vaporization jutsu. The water inside the tub rippled and then seemed to vanish. Iruka recognized the jutsu she was using. It transformed any liquid within her range into gas in the air around her. It was an E-rank jutsu that was borrowed from Kirigakure, who used it to train people in how to use both the low D-rank jutsu Sweden, Kasumi, water style, mist, and the ordinary D-rank Sweden, Kirigakure no Jutsu, water style, hidden in the mist jutsu. Just where had Sakura found it? Then the scarred Chunin remembered that her father, Kazashi, was a retired genin with a water affinity. He was bound to know at least a few techniques he could pass on to his child. Preparations, done. Sakura nodded in satisfaction. Now then, here we go. She ran through 5 more hand signs. Sweden, Suioki Bunshin no Jutsu. The light condensation hanging in the air seemed to shimmer for a moment before, in a small flash, 2 clones of the girl stood next to her. One moved forward and while the other did the same to Mizuki. "A solid clone jutsu," Mizuki gaped. "Barely," Iruka said, only barely keeping his professional facade up. "It's a simple jutsu that's only slightly harder than the basic Bunshin, but it does require a certain amount of humidity or condensation to be present in the air in order to be used, so it's best used around lakes, at sea or on the coast. Vapor clones have a very limited amount of their creator's strength and relatively low durability, but they can use Sweden jutsu. Congratulations Sakura-chan. You've earned the bonus points." Tee-hee. Sakura smiled brightly and then threw a smug look at Ino, who glowered back at her in annoyance. "I think that she's going to go far," the scarred Chunin thought with a smile as he handed her a Hite 8. It was one thing to know how to use a jutsu, but to prepare a method to use it even in an area like the classroom, which was usually too dry to make even one vapor clone, took both a level head and forward thinking. Both useful traits in any aspiring shinobi, with Naruto. The blonde boy grinned as Sakura passed with ease. In the months since he had revealed the gamer to his Gigi, one thing he had done his best to do was level up his Fuinjutsu as much as he could. Now, he could not only make Type 1 storage scrolls, but Type 2 storage scrolls and basic exploding tags. His Gigi had given him a scroll about some seals a while back, and he had finally managed to make one for Sakura just a couple of days ago. She would have had to spend a bit on a large enough storage scroll, a Type 4 at least, in order to carry that much water. The rest of the class were gaping at Sakura in disbelief. Most of them had heard of solid clones, especially the clan kids, but they were also usually somewhat chakra intensive and tied to one of the elements. One of the only exceptions to the latter was the Cage Bunshin no Jutsu, a pure chakra construct invented by the second Hokage. The Suioki Bunshin was an exception to the former, only having a chakra that was a bit over double that of the basic illusion clone. Sitting back as the rest of the class went down and passed the exam was kinda boring, but Naruto knew that it couldn't be helped. Alphabetically, he was one of the last people who was to be called. Unless some more people with a V, W, X, Y or Z in their surname came into the equation, he was always going to be called somewhere around last, unless it was reverse alphabetical order, that is. Eventually, "Naruto, you're next," Iruka called, and Naruto sauntered down the stairs to stand easily in front of Iruka-sensei and Mizuki, who was barely able to keep his distaste and hatred concealed. "I think you know the drill by this point," the scarred Chunin said dryly. "Third time's the charm, Iruka-sensei," Naruto said confidently. "So, here we go." Silently, and without any hand signs, Naruto switched places with the wooden block posed for a moment and then swapped back. He had finally maxed out this jutsu over the last few months and earned a small perk for it from reaching LV 100 LVMAX. The substitutor, you have mastered the Kawarimi no Jutsu to its ultimate limit. You are now able to swap with something as small as a mustard seed with no hand signs and no intonation. Chakra cost for using a Kawarimi no Jutsu is now set at a flat 5 CP, regardless of the small size of the target or how close it is to the jutsu's outer range. Swapping with anything larger than yourself will still cost more CP though. Mastering a jutsu like this really did pay dividends. Iruka blinked in awe. That was well done, Naruto. Okay then. Please transform into Hokage-sama for me." Smirking, Naruto made the ram hand sign and transformed in a small explosion of chakra smoke. Well, small by his standards, anyway. It was about triple the amount that Sakura had used for the same jutsu. When the smoke cleared, the stern personage of Sarutobi Hiruzen stood there eyeing both Chunin with scant favor. "Iruka-kun, Mizuki-kun, I trust that everything is going well in these exams?" The voice, both in tone and cadence, was spot on, enough to make Iruka and Mizuki instinctively straighten just as it would with the real deal. Naruto smirked as he reverted back. He had also maxed out the Henge no Jutsu, but hadn't received a perk. Instead he'd received a quest. 4x of the 100 transformations. You have maxed out the Henge no Jutsu. The most famous man to use this jutsu is Kazan of Yugakure, known as Hyaku Henge no Kazan. Match him in this regard for a reward. Quest goal: transform into 100 different people and deceive at least one person who knows the target well. Current transformation and deception count: 2100s. Quest reward: plus 5000 XP. Perk: Naruto of the 100 transformations, Shunshin no Jutsu, scroll. He would have done it just for the pranking value, never mind the actual rewards for the quest. "That was excellent, Naruto." Iruka praised him with a smile. "I literally couldn't tell the difference. Now, for the final test, please use a Bunshin no Jutsu." Nodding, the blonde Jinchuriki ran through 4 hand signs. Doden. Iwa Bunshin no Jutsu. From his mouth, he spat out a large glob of earth that formed into 4 rock clones. "Does this count?" Mizuki asked Iruka in shock. The guidelines specify that they have to be able to perform a Bunshin no Jutsu, not the Bunshin no Jutsu. Iruka reminded him. As a balancer though, Naruto doesn't receive any bonus points for this jutsu. Okay, so you have now passed this section of the test, Naruto. Do you want to use another clone technique for bonus points? Sure. Naruto grinned. Oi, you too, do it. 2 of the Iwa Bunshin nodded and ran through 2 hand signs apiece. Doden. Iwahachi no Jutsu. Earth Release. Rock Bowl Jutsu. Each of them spat out another lump of rock apiece, which formed largish bowls after hitting the ground. Naruto then looked at the Chunin. Could you fill these with water, Iruka-sensei? I need it for my jutsu. Iruka smiled. Sure. He ran through a hand sign sequence and raised a hand at each bowl. Suiden. Suihachi no Jutsu. Water style. Water bowl jutsu. A spout of water erupted from his hands, filling the bowls very quickly. Terminating the jutsu, Iruka saw the awe on Naruto's face. That was cool. I thought that jutsu was one hand only, the boy exclaimed. Enough practice with a jutsu and you can tweak it to a degree, the scarred Chunin said modestly. And what jutsu are you planning on showing us? The boy jinned and formed the tiger hand sign. Suiden. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Slowly surging up at the expression of his chakra, a single clone made of water grew out of each of the rock bowls and quickly stepped out, allowing Naruto to repeat the jutsu again. Why water clones? Iruka asked after a moment of surprise. I found the scroll in TG-13 last month. Naruto shrugged. It still takes too long to form a clone, but I'm gonna practice until it gets up to standard. That's a good plan. The scarred Chunin nodded and undid his own Hite 8 before handing it over to Naruto. Just like I promised, my Hite 8. Wear it proudly as a ninja, Naruto. Naruto took it carefully and smiled wildly enough that it was a surprise the top of his head didn't suddenly fall off. It had been an old promise between the two of them that when Naruto graduated, Iruka would give him his Hite 8. Waiting through the long, not to mention boring, after-exam lecture was a pain in the ass, but Naruto bore through it. After class was dismissed for the day, with an admonishment to come back in on Monday for team assignments, Naruto ran pell-mell back to his apartment and sat down on a seat, taking off his new Hite 8 and used observe on it. Konohagakure Legacy Hite 8 Forehead Armor, a Hite 8 handed down from Amino Iruka to Uzumaki Naruto. It is old, but well maintained and cared for. While there are numerous designs for Hite 8, this one is the general type designed to be tied over the forehead in mimicry of the cloth hachimaki that bore clan symbols during the requires class, genin, and minimum level of 15 to be worn in combat. Plus 10 armor to covered location. 5 fuinjutsu slots, empty. This was something he had discovered once his fuinjutsu skill had reached LV5. Each piece of clothing or armor had a set limit to how many seals you could place on it. Some, like typical civilian clothing, couldn't even have a single seal on it, while hardy shinobi clothing could have up to 10. A good example would be the lesser Fujin set of clothes. The seals already present on them to give them their useful effects took up 4 slots, leaving a single free slot for another piece of fuinjutsu, although Naruto couldn't add any at the moment. This was mainly because the cloth armor seal he had required 2 slots to fill. Until he found a way to either increase the number of slots a piece of clothing possessed or reduce the number of slots that the cloth armor seal needed to take up, that is. His selection of supplementary fuinjutsu, that is fuinjutsu that wasn't a trap seal, an explosive tag or a storage seal, was a grand total of 1 right now, so that was something he was gonna have to brush up on once he was assigned to a team and had clearance to the shinobi library. Then again, I may be able to get some fuinjutsu from whoever my Jonin sensei is. Naruto hummed thoughtfully, even as his eyes strayed to the sword rack that he'd been given for free when he'd picked up his sword. It was a beautiful weapon. A kodachi, with the telltale ripple of a master-forged blade along its edge, as well as all of the little tricks that Higurashi Tatsuhiko had forged into it. The name that the blacksmith and his wife had suggested had sounded cool, so Naruto had gone along with it. Kogetsu Kyushiki, forged from the purest of chakra metal by the combined skill of the Higurashi family of weaponsmiths. The name of this blade is twofold. It can either mean Arc Moon Type 9 or Fox Moon Type 9, depending on how you translate it. The Type 9 part of the name is in reference to the 9 special features that Higurashi Tatsuhiko designed and implemented into this weapon. If mastered, the wielder will be very close to unstoppable in close combat. LV-20 Mastercrafted, short weapon, chakra weapon, custom-made, evolving. Durability. 300 piercing damage. SX 2 to 10 slashing damage. S plus 3-5. Bludgeoning damage. S+5 special abilities. 1. Back blade. On the reverse of the tip of the blade is a small bladed section that can be used for a reversed cut. Skill undiscovered, 0/1. 2-4. Hidden hilt weapons. By rotating the lower half of the hilt of the kogetsu, one of 3 optional weapons become available to be unsealed. A short blade intended for a sneak attack, a chain and moon-shaped blade to entangle the enemy, or a compact launcher that can fire a small cluster of senbon at the enemy. Skills undiscovered, 0, October 15, 20. 5. Serrated form. Grants the blade a serrated edge to deal more damage. Skill undiscovered, 0/25. 6. Blunt form. Removed the edge completely in order to be used in sparring. Skill undiscovered, 0/30. 7. Fuki, reversion. Reverts the kogetsu kyushiki to its base form, undoing any transformation that the blade and hilt are under in the process. Skill undiscovered, 0/35. 8. Kogetsu chakraha, crescent blade chakra wave. Allows the user to launch a wave of pure chakra at the enemy to deal damage. 5-minute cooldown between uses. Skill undiscovered, 0/40. 9. Kyujin Renden, 9 blades barrage. The blade splits into 9 tendrils that lash out and strike the nearest enemy. Damage is halved against armored locations. Skill undiscovered, 0/50. The sword royally kicked ass, and Naruto had sworn to examine the fuinjutsu of the thing until he could replicate all of it. Just examining it casually and trying to read the seals had given him 2 levels in fuinjutsu already. The evolving part confused him a bit, but it seemed that his gamer power had interfered with his sword somehow and made it so he had to kill a certain amount of enemies, be they human or chakra mutations, before he had access to the skills of his sword. Presumably, he had to kill them with the sword too. Naruto caught sight of the clock and cursed. He had to meet Iruka-sensei at Ichiraku's in a few minutes. Leaping up and running to his bedroom, he changed into a fresh set of clothes. Hesitating for a moment, he walked out into the living room and reverently laid his new Hite-8 in front of his sword stand before heading out. Later, Ichiraku's ramen stand. Naruto placed his 3rd bowl of ramen down and sighed in satisfaction. Ramen was truly the food of the gods. He would accept no blasphemous substitutes. "I'm very proud of you, Naruto," Iruka said from next to him. "You blew everyone's expectations out of the water with your exam results today. You got in the top 10. Guess I should have put more effort into my studies a lot sooner," Naruto admitted sheepishly. Then he noticed something. "Hey, Tsuchi-asen, where's Ayame-ne? I haven't seen her tonight." "She's off getting some ingredients for me," the owner of the ramen stand replied. "It's just a pickup from a nearby village, but I had a team of genin escort her as a high D-rank mission. Some stupid bandits have been lurking around the boundaries of Konoha's outer patrols for a while, and I didn't want to risk Ayame's life. I'll have to see if we can get a clearance mission set up." Iruka sighed. "I swear, sometimes the arrogant stupidity of bandits is too much for words. Some are simply stupid enough to dismiss shinobi as nothing more than common soldiers, ignoring or refusing to admit that chakra even exists, while others discard it as simply parlor tricks. If ever there was a case of too stupid to live," the man finished with a tired mutter. "Too true." Tucci snorted. "Useless wastes of space. Anyway, she'll be back tomorrow or the day after. Plenty of time for you to show off your Hite-8 to her." Naruto just rolled his eyes. "Iruka-sensei, how common are bandits anyway?" Both more common than I'd like and less common than you'd think." The scarred Chunin mused. "Bandits come from all walks of life. Deserters from the armies of the daimyo, villagers who had to turn to it to feed their families. Some of the more dangerous ones tend to be dropouts from the various shinobi academies, outcasts from the wandering clans, and even some low-ranking nuke nin, those ranked D and C in the bingo book. You tend to see them more during the wars or for a couple years afterwards, but they crop up even during peacetime. Most tend to find isolated areas far from ninja and prey on lone travelers and villages, but some, like the idiots around Konoha, tend to poke the bear by targeting the more well-traveled trading routes or larger settlements. We get hired by the local representative of the fire daimyo to clean them out every so often, but they tend to pop up again like cockroaches after a while." Wow, the newly minted genin blinked. Yeah, bandit clearing missions are a pretty standard C-rank mission. Iruka said with a laugh. The daimyo's armies rarely move from the cities unless it's wartime, and we're more mobile to begin with. So we ninja get the job of cleaning up bandits more often than not. Well, that's enough on that. Looking forward to finding out who your Jonin sensei is on Monday. Yeah, I've been wanting to get into the genin portion of the library for a while, 'cause I need to get proper Kodachi and Tanto styles to learn. The boy grinned. I meant to get you one, but I got caught up in paperwork. Iruka apologized before glancing at the clock and scowling. And I have to go and finish more paperwork right now. The end of a semester is always a pain in the butt with this kind of thing. Leaving a handful of Ryo notes on the counter to pay for his and Naruto's ramen, the Chunin ruffled a protesting Naruto's hair before leaving. Why does he always do that? Naruto grumbled good-naturedly as he tried to get his spiky mop back into some semblance of order. Tuchi la Fureshin he wore. After chatting with the ramen chef for a while, Naruto headed back to his home to get started on his Fuinjutsu training. An added bonus was that he was selling his decent products to the Higurashi family for a big paycheck, or at least, for a reasonably large paycheck. When he got into his house, he at once noticed something off. There was a scroll on his living room table that definitely hadn't been there when he'd left earlier. This rang alarm bells for the Jinchuriki, so he decided to be cautious. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he said, making the clone hand sign. A single shadow clone appeared in a pop of smoke and reluctantly headed towards the scroll and picked it up gingerly. Open it. The original ordered. Yeah, I got it, boss. The clone grumbled. The shadow clone jutsu had been developed for the purpose of scouting dangerous areas, deliberately tripping traps and opening strange scrolls boxes that appeared from nowhere, but that didn't mean that the clones liked it by any stretch of the imagination. Deciding to get it over with quickly, the clone opened the scroll and flinched away, expecting an explosion or something to blast it out of existence. When that didn't happen, it breathed a sigh of relief before reading the contents. Boss, Mizuki Teme is up to something, it said after a minute and showed its creator the scroll. It was a basic message informing Naruto of an exam exclusive to the top 10 ranked genin from the basic exam in order to gain the rank of Rookie of the Year. He had to infiltrate the Hokage Tower and steal a particular scroll in order to complete half of the exam. The other half was to abscond to a clearing in training ground number 19, the Forest of Quiet Contemplation, and learn one jutsu from the scroll. It was signed, Toji Mizuki, at the bottom. The two Narutos exchanged blank looks and said at the same time, what kind of slobbering Nimrod does he think I am? Later Hokage's office, Hokage Tower stamp, rejected. Stamp, approved. Stamp, all rejected. What manner of idiots make requests for 24/7 guard for the civilian council? Sarutobi, though irritably. He had finished discussing things with the Jonin sensei a few hours ago, and he had been battling the accursed piles of paper that threatened to bury him under ever since. The sound of feet landing lightly on the carpet in front of his desk made the aged Hokage look up in surprise. Standing in front of him wearing the full, lesser Fujin set in his Hite 8 was Naruto, with a serious expression on his face. Naruto-kun, how did you get past the Chunin patrollers? Not to mention the Anbu outside my office? Sarutobi frowned. The Chunin are easy to get past because they've kept to the same patrol pattern for the last 6 months. The boy shrugged. The Anbu weren't as easy, but they don't watch their own little routes in and out of places, so it's easy as long as you memorize those. The Hokage felt a vein pulse on his head in irritation. Someone was being lazy in the Chunin patroller division, as he had specifically ordered that the patrol patterns were to be alternated every month. He also cast a reproving glance to where he knew one of his Anbu operatives was stationed and felt the man's embarrassment at being snuck up on by an hour's fresh genin, even if it was the prankster king of Konoha. I see, I will plug those holes in the morning. Hiruzen pinched his nose at the fresh paperwork that this little excursion of Naruto's was going to generate. So, to what do I owe this late-night visit? Is this your new genin outfit? Light combat version, yep. Naruto nodded before shaking his head. I have something you need to see, Hokage-sama. It's a very suspicious note that I found in my apartment, from Mizuki. This made Hiruzen narrow his eyes at his favorite orphan. "Show me." After examining the note in question, the Hokage nodded. This is indeed suspicious. The scroll in question is the Forbidden Scroll of Seals, which is full of dangerous kinjutsu. Telling you to steal it is the equivalent of ordering you to commit treason. So he wanted me to do his dirty work and then run, leaving me to carry the can for him, Naruto growled. Very likely, but while I recognize this as Mizuki's handwriting, a decent forger could have written this out to frame him. Hiruzen scowled before a smirk crossed his face. Naruto-kun, how would you like to be responsible for bringing in a nuke nin on your first day as a ninja? The smirk on Naruto's face made Iruka, putting his feet up at his home after finishing his paperwork, shiver in trepidation, such was the fell evil it contained. Tell me more, Hokage Gigi.